Today, the last great American city east of the Mississippi, St. Paul, Minnesota. Our journey today will take us from the beautiful cathedrals, a place where it can feel like you're in Europe. I know, this is so hard to see. Save our street. We're ending on an old indigenous trail and a pub. Do you believe in miracles? Hello, my name is John O'Sullivan, and this is One City, One Take, the show where we explore a city without any cuts. Today, the last great American city east of the Mississippi, St. Paul, Minnesota. Our journey today will take us from the beautiful cathedral down to the mansions of Summit Avenue, over into downtown and the Capitol building over there. We're ending on an old indigenous trail and a pub. I hope you have a good time today. It is going to be a long video, so feel free to scrub around as you make your way through this video, find the parts that interest you the most, and as always, anything can happen on these things. And so if the unexpected happens, well, usually that's the most interesting part of the video. So stay tuned. Let's get into it. First off, where are we? St. Paul, Minnesota is the political headquarters of Minnesota. And as a result, we also have the religious headquarters of the Catholic Church right here with the Cathedral of St. Paul. 3 buildings have borne the name Cathedral of St. Paul in this city's history. The first one was over on the other side of downtown here at Dayton's Bluffs. The second one was in the CBD, in the city center, the central business district. And the third one was right here. And the Archbishop who wanted to build this place, he wasn't that keen on being responsible for it. His name was Archbishop John Ireland. The man was in his late 70s when the people were saying to him, please, can we build a big cathedral? Because this period of American expansionism had these new capital cities cropping up everywhere. Cleveland, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, they were all battling for superiority. And there was maybe even a bit of a inferiority complex here when it came to the different cities. And so when St. Louis would build a cathedral, well, then Cleveland would build a bigger one. When Minneapolis would build a train terminal, then St. Paul would build a bigger one. And cathedrals are a big part of this game. However, St. Paul took until 1913 to open this beautiful building, which if you put a bag over my head and you just ripped it off in the middle of this church, I would probably think I was in Europe. It is a stunning building, but also a relatively new one, given the development of the Midwest over here. Archbishop John Ireland was thinking he's at the end of his career. He doesn't want to invest the time it takes to build this thing up. He'll let the next guy do it. But by 1901, the people had had enough, and he announced, no, actually, we are indeed going to build a cathedral in this city. It took just over a decade. It was in Palm Sunday of 1913 that this building opened, and it became the headquarters of the Archdiocese of Minneapolis and St. Paul. The Archdiocese of Minneapolis and St. Paul was already a bit of a challenging designation because Minneapolis, being the commercial hub of Minnesota, they really wanted to be the place where the cathedral was as well. And so the Archbishop was smart. He decided to put the cathedral over on the Minneapolis side of downtown. As I point that way, that's downtown Minneapolis over there. And so there's a little bit of an olive branch to the city over there, but those Minneapolitans, a bit full of themselves, said, no, we still need a big church. So they built the Basilica of St. Mary, which you can visit. Beautiful church. It could fit inside this one. This thing is gargantuan. So that's a little bit of church education for you. The Archbishop is in charge of deciding these things. The diocese is the governing structure of the Catholic Church. And a cathedral specifically is a building where a diocese is headquartered. That's why this is the Cathedral of St. Paul, and over in Minneapolis, it is the Basilica of St. Mary over there. From this angle, you can see what I mean when you look up at this beautiful dome. This is the place where it can feel like you're in Europe. They do have tours of this building, and so we're gonna make our way out of here pretty quickly because I wanna give them the respect of telling you to go on their tour. There's a ton that you can learn about this place. Things like the old brick that they have over it from the Joan of Arc jail cell. So that's one of the relics that they have. Altars all over the place, and from different pieces of stone from different nations. And finally, up there, that picture is a picture of the Archbishop leading in a prominent family into church on opening day. That prominent family is none other than the Hills, James J. Hill specifically. And James J. Hill is a man who donated a lot of money to make this church happen. Even though he wasn't a Catholic, he wasn't an American, but he was one of the richest men in the country. His wife was a devout Catholic, but he himself, I can imagine, probably had some thoughts about this church because it kind of affected his view. His house is that one, who we're going over to next. That's James J. Hill house. And so imagine it, he's sitting there in his front porch and suddenly there's all this construction going on here. They have to reroute Summit Avenue to make this happen. And so he gives a lot of money because he kind of built this city. He has a lot of political favors to give out to be able to receive political favors in return. So the Cathedral of St. Paul really is built with a lot of his money, even though he wasn't a Catholic himself. Well, let's not get hit by a car in this video. It'd be good for views. Thank you. So we're gonna cut across this parking lot now. I'm gonna zip up. It's a bit nippy out here today. We've kind of planned this today because the weather looks spectacular. We're gonna be getting some snow very soon. So I'm hoping we get some beautiful snowflakes later on in this tour. I'm gonna rug up, make sure that we don't get too cold. And as I go, let me introduce Summit Avenue, the street that we're about to go on right here. Summit Avenue is the best preserved section of Victorian homes in America. An amazing place that you can come to and just do some great house watching. It's not quite 10 miles of historic homes that people come to from far and wide to study this period of architecture during the Gilded Age. It's like the last gasp of Americans trying to make homes look like Europe before a new school of architecture came on the scene. We'll talk about that in a second, but first, let's go over and see this big mansion. So we're kind of on this is all the Catholic campus that we're on. Let's go to the driveway over there, KJ. Let's go across. It's like this building's part of the Catholic Church. The big cathedral's over there. I can see the rectory over there as well. And until recent times, this building, this mansion, James J. Hill House, was also part of the Catholic Church. Mary Hill, James's wife, she and her daughter, as devout Catholics, end up giving a lot, not just the money to build that church, but even the very house that they used to live in. This was part of the Catholic campus. But having a historic house like this takes lots of ongoing maintenance. And doing maintenance of a historic home that is built from the 1890s has also a lot of special education that's needed. For example, this kind of stone that they built the house with, it absorbs the pollutants from the air around it. That's why it has that dark quality on it. But do you notice the portico where the carriages would have originally come up on? It's lighter than the rest of the house because the Catholic Church sandblasted it to try to take care of all that pollution and ended up causing irreparable damage to the house. And so as a result, that was one of the many reasons why it is donated to the Minnesota Historical Society, where it's a museum today. And so it's all decorated for Christmas. We're filming this in December right now. You go through that entrance there and they have wonderful tours of that place. The size of this place, the scale of this mansion is ridiculous, even by Summit Avenue terms. Because as we walk across this, we're actually walking across 3 plots to cross this mansion. As we go look across the street, I don't know how much you'll be able to see on the camera through the trees there, but you'll just notice the tips of the houses, they're much more compact, right? They're tighter together because the plots are smaller. But James J. Hill is one of the richest men in America. His name is uttered under the same breath as the Vanderbilts and the Carnegies. In fact, when Teddy Roosevelt ran for re-election, one of his big platforms was taking down the monopolists like James J. Hill. So that's how significant this man was, who ends up connecting the railroads from St. Paul all the way out to the West Coast over here. And this wasn't the only house that he had. I mean, excepting the guardhouse that we see just right over here, he also built the house next door to it, and there's another house down the way also built by him. And the house next door ends up being gifted to his son, who would run his company after James J. Hill passes away. But his son doesn't think it's big enough. So you can see the front part of the house, it's like a rectangle, and then behind it, it has that barn-shaped roof back there. And that's because his son built an expansion on it, right? The son always wants to do better than the father, I guess. As we walk down this street though, I want you to have a look at all these different styles of architecture from all these houses around. Maybe KJ, as you do a big, slow, sweeping pan across the street, I want you to look for what is the unifying architectural characteristic that's bringing all of these houses together. Take a look and see if you can start to see similarities between these things. Try to develop your own case for how this place is architecturally unique. As we pass this snowplow here, I'll tell you the answer. Let's just zoom over here. Get the Queen Anne behind me there. So this is Queen Anne architecture behind me here, but the other styles of architecture we have here, there are craftsman houses, there are Tudor, neo-Tudor houses, there's Italian villas. The common bond that brings all these buildings together is a complete lack of common bond between all the buildings. American architecture in the 1890s and 19-teens, which are the two biggest development periods for this street right here, it is a bit of a wash with styles. People can't really decide on what is it that we want American architecture to look like. And in a time and in a place like the Midwest, where we're striving to say, no, we are significant. We are part of the new American story. Of course, people want to build houses that look like the grand houses from the New England, from the East Coast. And what do those houses look like? Well, they look like Europe. So all these houses are just trying their best to look more like the stuff you see over in Europe. And eventually architects start to rebel against this. In the 1920s, outside of Chicago, the Prairie School of Architecture developed in this country. Frank Lloyd Wright is a name that you probably know from this, but all across the Midwest, there are beautiful examples of prairie architecture. And this is architecture that, unlike this is actually a bad house to use, because this is one of the 20% that is not original over here. But as you look over here, these houses are in Summit Avenue, but they may as well be anywhere, right? So as you look at these houses over this way, you'll notice that they don't have a conversation with the landscape around them. That's what Prairie School did. Prairie School of Architecture made it so that those houses really talked to the specific landscape that was around them. And it was so popular that it swept the world. I'm fascinated with this idea of inferiority when it comes to cultures. And so just like the US was trying to emulate the sophisticated East Coast and European styles, well, a new country came about and they also wanted to be sophisticated, but a little bit later. That country was Australia, a place near and dear to my heart. I'm an Australian citizen, lived in Melbourne, Australia for a number of years. And their capital of Canberra was built from nothing. They couldn't decide on whether to put the capital in Melbourne or Sydney, so they put it right in the middle. And they wanted to use the architectural style of the day. This is the 1920s, and so what did they use? Prairie School of Architecture. I love this about architecture. Architecture is a conversation, right? It's not, you can't just study any one building. You have to go look around everywhere. One other thing I want to point out to you, you're going to start seeing these. And KJ, whenever you see one of these signs, I want you to make sure that you point to it. SOS, save our street. You can make a point that like these kind of signs helped the new mayor of St. Paul win her election just last month over here. These signs are everywhere because this road needs to be resurfaced. It's been decades since they've done a full construction project over on this road. And so they started a public comment on this a couple of years ago, and immediately the residents of this neighborhood started putting these signs up, save our streets, because the argument went that this new city council, which didn't understand the historic significance of this place, they're gonna come through and they're gonna tear out all of these beautiful trees, this beautiful tree canopy to put bike lanes in. Now, for people who are on the other side of the political spectrum from the SOS people, they would tell you that, no, actually, that wasn't the plan all along. It's just that new city codes require streets to be wider than they once were. And so it's not bike lanes that are going to take down trees. It's just the fact that we have new safety standards for our roads. And so no matter what happens, there's going to be change on this street. But it's created a pretty hot-tempered fight in this neighborhood. The Save Our Streets people versus the YIMBY people, the Yes in My Backyard people who are much more about public transportation and biking. And this is one of the hot-button issues happening in our city right now. They will be starting construction on this. I believe it's next summer that it's going to start. But there's been just lots and lots in the news and public comments about it. And myself as a biker, I started to get pretty cynical about all these SOS signs. I started thinking, ugh, God, these guys are just like so old school. They don't understand that like we need to change our city to the habits of the people who are living in the 21st century. Over time, I've softened my view on this though, because for a long time, the residents of Summit Avenue have sought to preserve the historic nature of their neighborhood. And so while I get a bit frustrated today that they seem to be against progress when it comes to bike lanes, I think I need to take a step back for myself and say, you know, this neighborhood wouldn't be the beautiful neighborhood that I love so much if not for these kind of conservative folks who are against change over here. So there's a little bit of what the hot button topics are happening here. Some other things that are notable here, this is a beautiful building here, 312 Summit Avenue is the original home of Macalester College right here. And then, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. It's the next one over is the original home of Macalester College. I'm off center here. And the next one from that is one of not James J. Hill. Look at me. I'm just like, you got to fact check me left, right, and center. It's one of Cass Gilbert's houses. Cass Gilbert would go on to make the Capitol, which we'll see later on in the tour. There are whole tours that you can book here, and you book them through James J. Hill House, the museum I told you about over there, and any walking tours where they know a lot more about this street than I do. But the best thing in my mind is just walk down it. It is stunning, but halfway down to Minneapolis, it turns into a boulevard with a nature strip in the middle, a popular spot for cross-country skiing as well. It's a great spot to be. There's a building over here I want to show you. See, look at this. Can you find a bike? Let's play find a bike lane. Walk over that way, and then keep following me, KJ. If you go that way, just I'll do a walk towards you. Where's the bike lane? The bike lane is exactly where I'm walking right now. So, to get on my high horse for a second. This is the problem, right? This is the line right here. That line, that's one side of the bike lane, and let's find the line on the other side. There it is. And you can see it's not really maintained. And on top of that, the thing that cyclists always worry about is getting doored. All it takes is you're biking down here, someone opens the door, and there have been injuries and fatalities on the street because of the current bike lanes. There also isn't a efficient bike path from Minneapolis to St. Paul. There is no like protected bike path going east-west, which is a big loss, a big opportunity cost, I would say. Let's step over here into safety and point out this, the Germanic American Institute. That building is something that's worth talking to. I'm going to return to a few times on this tour because we have tons of German heritage here in Minnesota. I think the stereotype of Minnesota is that we are a place where Scandinavians are. And this is true. We have more Scandinavians than anywhere else, but we actually have more Germans. It's just that the Germanic heritage got a lot less popular to talk about around about 1914. Historians on the video will understand why. It wasn't until the 1960s that this place came back. And now it's actually, part of it is a German immersion school. And it's not the only one. There's a handful of German immersion schools here in the Twin Cities as people start to embrace the Germanic roots once again. And so it's fun. There's a playground over there where you'll hear the kids playing outside. In the summertime, they have, on the weekends, occasionally they'll do Kaffee und Kuchen, coffee and cake. They do a fun Oktoberfest over here. So it's just an embrace. I mean, this is a place, Minnesota, that has a lot of immigrants coming here. I mean, we are on Dakota and Ojibwe land. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But after the treaties that allowed for the American Empire to come in here, there was a desire to colonize this whole area. So how do you colonize? Well, get people to be here permanently. And how do you do that? Well, you get farmers from Europe who are living through an economic depression to come over here and find land. The Germans, the Scandinavians, they come in here in huge numbers. The Germans are more in the southern part of Minnesota. So I grew up in Mankato, which is kind of, you draw a line right in the center of this, or you put a dot right in the center of the state, and then you draw a halfway dot between that and the southern border of Minnesota. That's about Mankato. That's the German area. Very German area over there. Meanwhile, you have to go to the northern suburbs, far exurbs even of the Twin Cities, to get to the Scandinavian areas. So the state isn't a monolith. We're not all evenly distributed over here. Oh, look at this. Achtung! There's some German right there. Whew. Any other German? Well, now we have English at the bottom, but attention, Achtung! We're gonna head down that alleyway over there. Oh boy, I'm gonna get called out for this. Here we go. Ich studiere Deutsch für 2 Jahre im Universität, aber es ist nicht so gut. I studied German for 2 years in university, but it's not very good. So I went to a German Catholic monastery for university. And so one of the languages you could take is German. And I figured, hey, German's not that hard, right? The word for milk is milch. How hard can this be? The answer is hard. I'm terrible with languages, but I tried. There's a period of time when I was a tour guide in Europe, and I would be on a bus giving tours through Germany, cursing my past self for not studying more of the German language. And one of the things that I would tell people is all the highways have these signs on them that say Ausfahrt, A-U-S-F-A-H-R-T, but it's funny because it says fart, right? And so people would always ask me, what does Ausfahrt mean? Because they'd see it over and over again. And I would explain, oh, well, you know in Rome how like all roads lead to Rome? Well, in Germany, they're like that too. All roads lead to a German city called Ausfahrt. And I'd get these tourists to believe me for a few minutes before telling them that Ausfahrt was just a translation for exit, which is why they were seeing it all over the place. Dumb tour guide joke. I came back here because I wanted to not just show you the mansions. You know, I come from working class roots. I'm Irish Catholic working class roots. I start to feel like I'm betraying my ancestors if I just show you rich people's houses. And so I like to show you these. These are the carriage houses behind us. Some are original like this. Some are more recently built. Some have been converted into houses in their own accord over here. This is Maiden Lane. It's the only named laneway in St. Paul. And so when you see the door up there, the reason there's a door on the second floor is because these houses were originally built for the carriage house, right? This is a place for horses to stay in. These are stables. And in the 19-teens, in the second wave of building, people started to build for automobiles. But you still see the remnants of putting hay up on the second level. Over here, here's a good example. You have the door up there, that sliding door, and above it, you can just see a square post coming up. That square post would have originally shot out from the building and had a pulley, and that pulley would have had a rope so that if I was a worker, maybe on the household staff tending to the horses, I'd be pulling that pulley to get the hay to move up there to store and stay dry for the horses. This path, by the way, would have originally been a dirt path, this alleyway over here, but we might be able to see, if we look closely, the hard brick they put in its place. Now, it's been packed down pretty well, so I have to look for it, but you occasionally see the logo, the brand for the brick. Princeton block, it's called. I don't think we're gonna get to see it today. That's kind of cool. Got a garage, production value. So the Princeton block is not made anymore, but to buy it on the secondary market is about $2 to $4 a brick. So one of the fun things that will happen with Summit Avenue when it starts its reconstruction is that you'll start to see these big piles of brick, because underneath the paved roads are bricks like this. And so when they reconstruct them, you'll often find big piles of bricks and also big rail ties as well. The big iron railroad tracks. Got cars everywhere here. We're gonna keep going on this way. And here too, look at this, oh my God. Thanks, mate. And so kind of the dirty secret of this neighborhood is that when you see one of those big piles of brick, you go put a wheelbarrow there and you fill a few things with brick and then you put it in your garden in the back. Which is kind of valuable. In a city, they store them. You shouldn't, it's unethical, you shouldn't do this, but I've been to multiple houses on Summit Avenue that have. This is my dream house right here. Beautiful. I think as a craftsman, I'm not an architecture guy. I try to pretend like I am on my tours, but it's got this beautiful wraparound porch over there. They put the wreaths up. They do a beautiful job at maintaining this house. And then they have this carriage house as well, which like that could be a granny flat. Like I don't know why they're not like converting that into like an Airbnb. That's what I'd be doing. Probably because the SOS people wouldn't let them. You know, old school neighborhood. I should also mention that like there is a stunning view over there. So of that house, and then as I look beyond it, it dips down below, and that's the Mississippi River Valley, which we'll come back to later. But the point I just want to make here is that that view has been taken by the houses, right? It's like the nice houses on that side that get the gorgeous view. And it's one of the things that surprises you. There are a few little lookout points you can go to. And it's always like, oh my gosh, wow, this is the view you get over here? Because most of it is on private property. There's nothing being used in there. There's just a car in there, and that's it. Literally, this garage is bigger than my house. So we should talk a little bit about the origin story of Minnesota. I'd like to do that now. This might have to get broken up, this spiel, and then also I'm going to text someone who we're going to be going to visit to see the inside of one of these houses. There we go. So Minnesota begins in the early days. We actually don't know when, because Dakota people have been here. I mean, tens of thousands of years ago, humans came over on a land bridge that used to be connected between Alaska and Russia. And then those people kind of spread across the continent over here into South America as well. And a group of people, a culture emerged from this, which we now refer to as the Dakota people. You might have also heard these people referred to as the Sioux, S-I-O-U-X. Same people, two different names. Those are the people who have been here for time immemorial. And so the Dakota people are mostly in the southern half of the state nowadays, and in the northern half of the state, that's Ojibwe land. Another word you may have heard for Ojibwe is Chippewa. Another word, aside from that, is Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe is the Ojibwe word for indigenous, so culturally it's kind of understood that when using that word as an English speaker, you're referring to indigenous people generally. But if you're speaking in Ojibwe and you say Anishinaabe, it's, I'm sorry, let me say it differently. Culturally, if you're speaking in English and you say Anishinaabe, it means all indigenous people. It means the Ojibwe people. But if you're speaking in Ojibwe, it's a more broad term. I'm saying the opposite of what I mean to there. So those are the two groups that are from Minnesota originally. The Ojibwe are more recent arrivals. They came here at the same time as the French did, around about 500 years ago. Whereas Dakota have been here for so long that we actually don't know quite how long it is. I'm going to tell you more about this story, but first, Cage, I'm going to go to this side of me here so we can start shooting this building on this side. We have someone going to meet us in here. So Chris, the producer for One City, One Take, he filmed the Minneapolis video, and he has a cousin who lives in here. And I was saying to him, gosh, it'd be so interesting to go inside these buildings. Look at some of these buildings over here, Cage. They're like gorgeous, gorgeous buildings. And I always think it'd be fun to go see the inside of one of these things. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go inside. Right here. We're going to meet Alexa. Like, you know, Amazon. Alexa.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm John. Nice to meet you. I'm gonna do this before we get started. You just clip that on right here.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Great.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, come on in.
Where are we?
We are on Portland and Summit here in St. Paul at this beautiful historic mansion.
Is this your house?
Yes, I live here with 6 other people.
That's incredible.
So, yeah.
Okay. Can you give us a little tour?
Yeah.
What do you happen to show us?
Well, as you can see, we're all decorated for Christmas.
That's
we have
lovely.
Christmas tree number 1 over here.
Number 1?
Yes,
Okay.
number 1. This is our family room, living room. Also pretty
incredible.
decked out for Christmas.
You have the fire going here and everything?
Yes. Fireplace in here. We have fireplaces all around the house, which you'll see a couple.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Lucky enough to have fireplaces in the bedrooms as well.
Really?
So, yeah.
How long have you been here?
I moved in April of 2024.
Okay.
So coming up on 2 years now.
And you're a renter?
Yes. Yes, I rent here.
Because I don't know that you're allowed to currently subdivide houses if they haven't already been. There's like complex zoning laws that are over here. There's people who get grandfathered in because it was originally subdivided out.
Yes.
So some places have done a lot worse job with like making it look. Some of it looks like a crappy apartment, but this like looks like it originally, I imagine, looked. doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely a lot of the woodwork and the moldings and stuff is all original. But some newer touches to still give it that like old charm.
Sure.
This is the library in here.
Do you ever just feel like you're living large in here?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's not normal, but I love it.
Are these books came when you moved in?
Yeah. So
That's fun.
interesting, but before the current owner and her brother, who also own it, purchased this house, it was I believe, sort of like a halfway house sober living situation for a few decades. So Father Fleming, I believe his name was the previous owner. After, of course, like the original owners, and a lot of the books and some of the furniture was his that he left behind, as far as I know. So,
well, it checks out with what I know about this neighborhood, because the neighborhood now is like kind of the crown jewel of St. Paul, but even like in the 1970s, this is a bit of a slum. And so the idea that it was a halfway house for decades it aligns with what I know about this place. Just kind of, it was derelict, it was forgotten about. And then there was associations and neighborhood communities that came together and said, oh, let's actually make this place special again. And so all these neighborhood associations come up. Have you been involved in any of the neighborhood associations around here?
I have not.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to be
Friends of Summit Hill, Summit Avenue. They maintain like the park that's over there and the fountain. There's Indian hunter and his dog is the sculpture over there. So cool. Is this it? Is there anything else worth showing?
I'll show you guys the dining room as well. It's pretty grandiose. We have Christmas tree number 2.
How many are there in total?
And then
how many trees are there total?
Dining room tail. What'd you say?
How many trees total?
Just 2. We have the one outside too, which is decorated nice. You can see nice at night, but 2 in here. Big chandelier, mantle. We got the kitchen in there, but there's some friends making food.
You know, I'll take the moment to just like talk to the camera for a second and just talk about the Gilded Age, if you don't mind. I'm gonna go on tour guide
feel
mode.
free.
Like as we walk around this place, I'm gonna move just to get some interesting stuff happening here. But the Gilded Age is this era in American history where you have people who started without money coming into money, and that was a bit of a new thing. It was a bold thing, and it's kind of where we get this idea of the American experience of pulling oneself up by their bootstraps. That was not a thing that people were used to, especially if they came from money. If they had a house like this, it usually meant that their parents had money, or their father had money, and their father's father, and father's father's father, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a problem. There's a threat, an existential threat, you might say, to the old money people. How do we differentiate ourselves from the new money people who suddenly have the same amount of ability to spend, like James J. Hill just down the road we saw before, but he's not one of us. So what do? Well, just on the street here's the University Club, and the University Club is a private members club where you're only allowed to join if the people in the club all vote and say that you can join, and you had to have gone to university, which a lot of new money people had not done it. My favorite like analogy or piece of entertainment to refer you to talk about this era of the Gilded Age is a little documentary you may have heard of called Titanic, right? Titanic, you have Jack, and you have Molly Brown, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Kathy Bates in Titanic. There's that famous scene when he's invited to eat in the dining room, and he sits there at this table with all these old money people, and then Kathy Bates' character, a real person from history, she's sitting next to him, and he doesn't know what to do with the silverware, and she just nudges him and says, start from the outside and work your way in. What are they talking about? They're talking about the rules of etiquette. Mary Hill, James J. Hill's wife, she actually referred to this as trial by etiquette. This is what she cynically described how these old money people would try to keep her out of their modern society. And so it's a really interesting period of the haves and the have-nots. In fact, I see a lot of similarity today in the 21st century where we have the uber rich making more money than they ever have, like the amount of billionaires or centibillionaires at this point who are hoarding more money. It's reminiscent of the Gilded Age. And so it's really interesting to me to come to this place, which you could say is like, you look through glass and be in history, but actually there's a lot of like reminiscence to today. What is it they say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I hear that rhyme when I walk through Summit Avenue over here. That said, I also love being in these houses, so maybe I'm a hypocrite, I don't know. Well, thank you, Alexa, for showing us the place.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Of course.
I love being in here.
Yeah, thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I'll get the door for you.
Does it stay warm in here with the fires? I mean, a lot of these houses are drafty, right?
They can be drafty, but yeah, with the fireplaces, it stays pretty warm, thankfully.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, Jill, I'll have you head out that way, and I'm going to take your microphone out there. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
lovely to meet you.
course.
All right, see you later.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. So much fun to see the insides of the houses. A lot of these houses, they're privately maintained, they're privately owned, and so you don't usually get the opportunity to go into those places. So I wanted to make sure that we got a moment to show you the inside. This is a neighborhood that is curated, is carefully crafted. And so even like looking over here, we have one of these little pocket parks. And these pocket parks are ways that some of the wealthy people would show their commitment to the neighborhood. That statue over there is Nathaniel Hale, the guy who famously said, "My only regret is that I have but one life to live for my country," during the Revolutionary War. Does he have any connection to St. Paul? Nah. But that's not the point, right? The point is that these are people showing off their generosity and their patriotism. Over here, a little bit farther down, is a beautiful viewpoint with a bald eagle looking over St. Paul. I mentioned in our chat just there with Alexa, the park that's across the street from here. And that one has Indian hunter and his dog, which we'll go check out now. And so because this whole area was a little bit derelict in the 70s, these places got to be pretty, they were not maintained, they were not well maintained. And so that's where you got these Friends of Summit Avenue Association that have come up and they give money to keep these places up. So when you're walking through here in the summertime, you just get an incredible view of these fountains and architectural touchstones. Great places to come and read a book. A little bit harder to do in the wintertime where you can see the difference. Like this is city property, and so the walks are maintained right here. They've been plowed. But then over there, inside the park, they just kind of give up on it. So there is a footpath that goes in here. Are you okay with us walking through the snow here, KJ? All right, let's do it. So let's dust off this sign right here. Gardens by Ramsey Hill Association. That was the name of the organization I was looking for. And then what we have here, somewhere under all the snow, is a plaque that tells you that the name of the statue is Indian Hunter and His Dog. Does this have any connection to the Dakota people who share thousands of years of history with this land? Not so much. Paul Mansford was an artist who studied in Athens, and I think when I look at this statue, I see a lot of Greek in it. It looks like it could be on a Parthenon. Dakota people didn't hunt with dogs, and so there isn't a lot to do with the Dakota people over here. But again, that wasn't the point over here. It was more a status thing to be able to show off these statues. That little alcove, that nook, is a great spot to just have a picnic, hang out. Also refuge from the rain over here. There were lots of people who grew up in this neighborhood who went on to do grand things. The best known one, who you probably have heard of, is a man named Scott Fitzgerald. F. Scott Fitzgerald, if you want to use his literary name. The author, famous author who wrote The Great Gatsby and many others. He grew up here. He ended up going to university out in the East Coast. He lived in Paris for a time in the 1920s. My favorite cultural reference to this is the movie Midnight in Paris, where Owen Wilson goes back in time and he meets F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda, who in their real lives, they lived here in this neighborhood in St. Paul after college. So as F. Scott Fitzgerald is writing his book about the wealthy, out-of-touch people over in the Hamptons of New York, I have to think that he is taking some of his experience, life experience, from growing up in this neighborhood as well. Did I just call people in this neighborhood out of touch? I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I have this class warfare mentality that I default back to, and it's probably not earned. It's definitely not earned. There are lovely people in this neighborhood. I think my tour guide persona sometimes wants me to get all revolutionary on stuff. I love you, Summit Avenue. I do. Thank you so much for being here. Speaking of Scott Fitzgerald, though, if you pivot over on this side of the path and shoot that way, this building that's behind me across the way, mostly it's an apartment building, but there is an awning over there. And that awning is a place where F. Scott Fitzgerald would go to drink. And so it's actually only just recently reopened to the public after years of being closed. There was a big fight between the city and the owner of that bar. Don't quote me on everything. It was like a legal fight. And so I want to be careful about not getting anything wrong. But broadly speaking, in between those two buildings is a courtyard, and there's a disagreement about whether the owner had a liquor license and allowed him to serve alcohol on that courtyard. And so the city said he couldn't do it. He said he could, and he kind of shut it down for a number of years. COVID happened during this as well, and it's only just reopened to the public. So really, if you're watching this and it's on, and you go online, you see that the Commodore, it's called, Commodore bar is open. Absolutely go, because it is beautiful, and we've been missing out on it over here. Let's return back to some of the indigenous history here in Minnesota. So the Dakota and the Ojibwe are the two groups that are here. Dakota have been here since forever. And then about 500 years ago, two groups arrived right at the same time, and not by coincidence. You had the French Canadians, who then were just known as French, because Canada was a French colony. They came from Quebec, and they're making their way down the Great Lakes looking for beavers. Why? Over in Europe, the beaver skin top hat was all the rage. And so people wanted beaver skin more than anything else. Beavers, because they're underwater, they have one of the highest densities of all animals in terms of hair follicles per square inch. And that meant that this beautiful, soft fabric that kept your head warm. Very popular. Nowadays, when we think of top hats, I think a lot of us go immediately to Abraham Lincoln. But Abraham Lincoln, he's living in the time of the Orient, right? The Silk Road. And so his top hat was silk. It would have been his parents and grandparents who wore beaver skin top hats. But, you know, the top hats had different materials that were used over time. Beavers were hunted nearly to extinction over in Europe. And so a lot of the Europeans came to the New World and started looking for beaver over here. And as they started hunting it to extinction over here, they made their way more and more into the Midwest. Minnesota being one of the big spots where these fur trading posts opened up all over the place. Just gonna let this guy pass here. Okay, let's keep walking though. And so the fur trading is a thing that brought the French over here. They would not have been able to get here if not for the help of another group of people they met along the way, the Ojibwe. The Ojibwe are the native peoples who originally came from like upstate New York. They were battling with the Iroquois native people, and then they found a prophecy. Their oral tradition tells of a prophecy that they heard where they were supposed to go find a place where the food grew on water. And so they start making their way west, and they get to the Great Lakes, and they're looking all over the Great Lakes. When they get over to Minnesota, they start seeing food that goes on water. They called it manumin. Today we call it wild rice. And so they've settled here. And nowadays the traditional home of the Ojibwe people is basically the periphery, all the boundaries of the Great Lakes is Ojibwe land. So here in Minnesota, that's northern Minnesota. When they got here, they initially did battle with the Dakota people, and they found peace with them. And this is all before European conquest and colonialism and all the rest would come later on. And so with the French Canadians coming down here, they came because the Ojibwe shared with them their cultural property, their cultural intellectual property is the way that we speak about this today, of the canoe. The canoe is an invention of the Ojibwe people, and it would have been really hard for the French to get down here if not for being able to paddle across Lake Superior, portage over through the lakes here, and then meet with the Ojibwe people. They were able to trade with them. And what did they trade? They traded the beaver. The French were going to go trap beaver on their own. They were going to hang out in a trading post they set up with European goods, things like blankets and shovels and gunpowder that they would sell in exchange for fur pelts. That is the origin story of Minnesota. These fur trading posts spread across Minnesota, initially for the Ojibwe. Later on, then the Dakota also would use fur trading posts around here. And that's why we have all this French heritage here in Minnesota. The state motto today is L'Étoile du Nord, which means Star of the North in French. There's a lot of French heritage that happens here. Now the French end up getting kicked out of here after the French-Canadian War. It's one of the theaters of the 7 Years' War, but it is an early origin story of this place, and also like an interesting thing to think about. I often ponder, what is this alternate version of Minnesota's history? Because by the time we get to the 19th century, the thing of value that native peoples can give to the American government stops being their tradecraft, stops being their ability to hunt, stops being their knowledge of the land, and it starts just being the land on which they live. And that ends up being a dark chapter of Minnesota's history and the history of the U.S. indigenous relationship. The US-Dakota War, which I grew up in school calling the Sioux Uprising, happens, and it is a devastating war for this place. The end of the war results in a concentration camp being set up over at Fort Snelling, and the Dakota are banished over to South Dakota. That's why today there's a much smaller contingent of Dakota people living in southern Minnesota as there are Ojibwe over in northern Minnesota because of this war. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on in the tour, but that's the broad strokes of this land's history. Later on with Fort Snelling, we would have the might of the American military-industrial complex come in here. But I always love to pause and just reflect on what would have happened if we just progressed this period of collaboration between the Europeans and the indigenous peoples. Something interesting to think about. But from here, if we look up at this beautiful building, this Queen Anne that we have above us, this is Blair House. This place was condemned about 50 years ago. Remember, this whole area was a slum. And so the fact that it's as beautiful as it is today is really a testament to this neighborhood kind of looking after itself. And as we look around over here, you'll see another matching building here with W.A. Frost and Company. That's one of my favorite outdoor patios in the summer months. They have a beautifully maintained patio there to eat dinner al fresco. They also are open in the winter time as well. Kind of a ritzy place to go eat. But there's great food all over here. You've got Handsome Hog, Bourbon and Smoke is a subtitle there. I think this is like a southern place. So you got shrimp and grits and chicken and waffles for brunch over there. Meanwhile, you have Moscow on the Hill. Moscow on the Hill is a place where you can get Russian food. They have good pierogi over there. You get vodka and all that. And then you've got a great neighborhood coffee shop, which I'll show you in a moment. But first, I want to take you over here and show you the inside of this building. There's an epic shot you can get, KJ, if you look straight up here and you kind of pan down as we go in. It is a building that really needs to be appreciated, I think, because they've done a hell of a lot of work on making it something new. Thank you, a few. So as you come into this building, you're just gonna see the restoration work that they've done on here. But one of the things I also love when I do restoration is that they have a moment to just take stock and consider what are the tastes of people today? Because when this building was built, brick was kind of a sign of wealth, right? Where you got your brick from. And so, regal buildings would be built with brick. But meanwhile, when the building was originally built, they just used whatever was in the ground below them. And so, right below us here, they go down these steps, you'll see the original stonework. See this? St. Paul limestone. And so when you see buildings built with this kind of stone, that means it's really old, because this is the stuff that's like in the ground all around us here. So usually the buildings that are built with St. Paul limestone are some of the original buildings in this place, but they use this St. Paul limestone to put in the basement level. So this wouldn't have been open to the public originally. This is the courtyard area. So if the apartment's up above, you have light coming in, and this would have been open air originally. They've since enclosed it. You can see the glass panels that are up there. And so you can see what the preference is. The aesthetic preference when this building is built is, let's hide the St. Paul limestone and let's put the brick up above. And then when they redo this building, what do? They end up making it so that the St. Paul limestone can be exposed once again. Look, we are a historic, original building that's worth your time. And they do have a beautiful fountain down here as well. Koi pond. Excuse me. I think of St. Paul, in contrast to Minneapolis, it's kind of a neighborhoody place. It's a big little town, right? It's both smaller in population, but it also just feels homey, right? And to me, that definition of that hominess is the coffee shop I'm about to take you in right now, called Nina's. There's a delivery being made right now, so just gonna make sure we stay out of this guy's way. This is Nina's. And so Nina's is like a beautiful neighborhood coffee shop. People come in here and it's kind of like coffee shops the way they used to be, right? So people just come in, doing work. It's not that quick, frenetic, Starbucks, grab and go sort of place. This place feels a place that serves the community. I think it's a favorite for a lot of people living around here. They also do specialty coffees, a lot of them named after F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda and all the rest. But for me, I'm just kind of a drip coffee kind of guy. This is like classic neighborhood coffee shop. Look at this. They even have like the little dog bones out here. I even have in my wallet. I mean, there's too much of a line right now, but I have my loyalty card there that they punch for my free coffee. So let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more coffees, and a free one's mine. Oh. Ooh, this is cool. Look at this. The Beeline. See that? It's a long articulated bus, very modern. It's got that cool looking bus station right across the way there with that big T at the top of it. That is not a bus. You think it's a bus. It looks like a bus. It's actually a train. It's a bus that thinks it's a train. It's called the BRT, the Bus rapid transit network. And while we do have buses that operate normally, those are the ones that are numbered. The ones that have colors or letters on them, those are BRT. And they're great, they're really cool. So we do have trains here, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But the BRT is like a special designation. And how these work is that you don't actually pay on board, because trains don't have you pay on board, right? Like you wait at this platform and then the doors open, you get on and it goes. Do you see how fast that bus went by? Actually, hear the bus coming right now. We'll be able to demonstrate this in real time. So you pay right here with your pay machine, and then the bus comes up, and then we'll come over this way. You'll get a shot of him coming in here, KJ. See? So he comes in over here. Not for me. And then see how the platform's elevated as well? So it's step-free access on there. They have ramps that come out while you're waiting for your bus as well. Here we go. Push for heat. Push one of these things, and we have these beautiful heaters here. This is a cold weather place, and so we need to have bus stations that have heaters around here. And this is kind of a fun reminder of the fact that we're in such a cold weather place. But in the meantime, we even have, like a train station would, the exact departure and arrival times for all the buses that are coming in. So this line, the B line, is the one that runs east-west from downtown St. Paul over to Lake Street in Minneapolis. Go over this way. As we pass Moscow on the Hill, which I was mentioning before, is that Russian restaurant here. So a funny thing that happened after a few years ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. They put a big sign up that said, "We support Ukraine. Please still eat here." I didn't say that exactly, but that was like the intonation that I kind of got from it. It's a grand old spot. Like it's a cool spot to come to. I'm looking for. There's a menu here, KJ. You just shoot this real quick. You can see all they have over here. We have handmade dumplings, some Kamchatka salad over here, and then where are the shots? They have all sorts. Here we go. Beverages, horseradish vodka, garlic dill vodka, cilantro vodka, caraway vodka, pepper vodka, a lot of other stuff. So if you want to try a palate that you may not have had before, it's worth coming to Moscow on the Hill. It's also got a sneaky little patio. One of the best patios in the Twin Cities is inside this place. Now here's where we're gonna have to call an audible. We're gonna come over this way because the road that goes over to the Capitol, which I normally will walk past the cathedral and go up towards, it's actually closed for construction right now. But we didn't want to ruin our one city, one take. And so, KJ, is it okay if I borrow your car? All right, look at this. We parked this strategically right here to be able to get to the Capitol efficiently and be able to show you a bunch of stuff. So, why don't I open the door for you? You're holding the camera and all that. There we go. Oh my God, how do you fit in here? There we go, that's better. So I do regret to tell you that this walking tour is going to briefly be a driving tour. But as we go here, I want to tell you about another mode of transport that used to be much more prominent here in the cities. And that would be the streetcar. The streetcar was a huge deal. In fact, Collier's magazine in 1953 called it the greatest streetcar network that America had ever seen. But the context of that was, the headline was how the Twin Cities destroyed the greatest streetcar network that the country's ever seen. Because right there, right where that blue car is, in between there, originally that would have been a tunnel with a streetcar emerging from the tunnel and making its way over here. That would have been the Selby line. And the reason there was a tunnel there is that, if you'll remember from the start of the video where I was at the Cathedral, we had this beautiful view of downtown there. And the reason there was a beautiful view of downtown is because we're on a hill, on Cathedral Hill as it's called nowadays. Originally that was the first spot where a streetcar left downtown. The first streetcar came to the Twin Cities in the 1870s, if you can believe it. This is before they even had like electricity or steam engines. It was a horse-drawn streetcar. The original ones had hay on the bottom, and then they had a wood stove as well, remarkably. And so I don't know how they got around the fire hazard of this thing, but eventually they invented a cable car, and the cable car harnessed the power of steam engines. Remember, this is the Industrial Revolution, right? And so with the steam engine came the ability to put a power source in a box at the end of a street, and a pulley would be on it. The pulley would pull on a cable, and the cable would be dug into a trench, and the cable car would be grabbing onto that cable, and that's the way that cable cars work. You still see a few of these around in the world today, like in San Francisco, operates a few of their historic cable cars. But by and large, it's just more efficient to not. It's more efficient these days to have an electric streetcar. And so eventually they all switch over to electricity. But when they're still using cable cars, one of those cable cars is making its way up Selby Hill, Cathedral Hill, and it loses grip, and it careens into downtown, and it crashes, and it kills someone, and it injures nearly a dozen more. And so it could have been a moment when they stopped making the streetcars, but it wasn't. They continued forward, and there's a time where you could get from nearly Wisconsin, Stillwater, Minnesota, all the way down to the southwest suburbs, where Minnetonka is now. They even had streetcar boats. Those boats were operated by Twin Cities Rapid Transit. It was incredible. But they dismantled it. They dismantled it because a private stockbroker in New York saw an opportunity to save money by turning them into bus lines. So that's exactly what he did, unfortunately. Of course, getting rid of the streetcars didn't mean that we got rid of the need for public transportation, or for transportation generally, I shouldn't say, but it just went private. And so as a result, look over that way, KJ, to the right at your window, and you'll see the interstate. That's I-94 right over there. And I-94 is a bit of a disaster for the Twin Cities, especially for the Black community. Because this area I'm driving on right now was originally Rondo. You can see it out the window there as well. It's a huge width that this interstate covers over here. And that width was the Rondo neighborhood, the Black neighborhood of St. Paul. This is not a unique story to where we are right now. Across the country during the 1960s and 70s, the interstate system, I don't want to go there. The interstate system had developed to a point where cities were able to get a lot of federal money by building interstates. And so where were they gonna use eminent domain to take down a bunch of houses? Well, they were gonna go to the places where people had the least political power. And Black Americans in this period of time had the least political power. And so even as close as Minneapolis, 35W, the other interstate here, plowed right through the Black neighborhood over there. And so it's one of these stories that is told in a lot of cities around the world. But I think we're talking about it more here in the Twin Cities specifically since 2020, since May of 2020, when George Floyd was murdered just next door over in Minneapolis. That caused a reckoning where we all took stock of like, what happened here? How do we get to this point where this man could be murdered in the street over here? And so as a result, in the Twin Cities, this neighborhood of Rondo, it's not that it was a secret before, but I've just heard it spoken about a lot more often since that happened, as a way I think of like recompense, maybe, of a way for us to acknowledge how we got to where we are. We are a home of a lot of civil rights movements. We fought for the Union during the Civil War. And so there's a lot of pride that comes in that, but with that pride also comes maybe a sense of unearned accomplishment when it comes to civil rights. Because there are lots of pretty terrible stories of racism here in Minnesota that we've swept under the rug for a long time, and we started to really acknowledge and talk about those in much bigger ways nowadays. All right, we've arrived. That's the little shortcut we just took to get across the bridge that's under construction. You want me to, actually, I'll pull over here, KJ, so you can hop out, not be in a snowbank. There we go. To be continued. Actually, I can keep talking on the microphone. You get out. I'll keep talking. We're coming down to the Capitol Mall right there. There's a bridge I like to cross right over that way, but it's being resurfaced right now, so we unfortunately can't go onto it. But as I park right here, we're going to be in this beautiful Capitol Mall complex, which was really artfully designed by Gilbert. We're going to talk a lot about him in just a moment. But first, let's get out of here. Get a little preview of that beautiful Capitol Dome behind me. We're going to try to go in there, actually. I think we're going to get there because you are allowed to film there as long as you're not having a tripod. There's your key back. And, uh-oh. Want to do this? Ready? There we go. So just to give you an idea, like, that's the cathedral over there. You can see the dome that way where we started our walk. And then normally you can walk across this bridge. So if you're coming to recreate this walk, feel free to do that in the future if you see it. And then come right onto the Capitol Mall complex. This Capitol Mall is filled with memorials. So many memorials. Dare I say, too many memorials? Because all around here, there are places that different legislators have taken the opportunity to put up a firefighters memorial right over there, or a Vietnam War memorial right over here. And it's not that any of these memorials are bad in their own individual fact, but I also think that the mall was initially designed to be this beautiful promenade that took you from, look over this way, the Capitol there, to an unbroken plain, down this way and straight to the Mississippi River, which you can just see the Mississippi River Valley over there. Now, the interstate interrupted that, so that wouldn't happen. But nowadays, it feels like there's a new memorial going up every year or two. As a result, sometimes you lose some of the memorials. So we're gonna head over here and show you my favorite, and I think most underappreciated memorial. If you go right in front of that plaque there, KJ. I'm about to show you that, so feel free to pan over to that for a second, then come right back over here, because before we can talk about that, a quick American history lesson when it comes to the war in Vietnam and the secret war over in Laos. So during this war, the American government created special guerrilla units, or SGUs. There's John F. Kennedy talking about them right there. And these SGUs were the native people of Laos and Vietnam. So here's a map right here. If you can get close on that map there, you'll see that these are long, skinny countries. So there's China here, and then Vietnam goes all the way down there. So South Vietnam, that's the democratic-controlled American allied side. And then on the North Vietnam side that was ultimately victorious in the Vietnam War is up here, Ho Chi Minh City about there. Right across the border then, this little country is called Laos. And then you got Thailand here. And so the people of Laos, the native people of Laos, are known as the Hmong people. See, Hmong. Minnesotans watching this video, you'll have to forgive me for like mansplaining Hmong people to you. But I find this when I'm a tour guide here. I give tours for a living, and people don't know who the Hmong people are if they're not from here or from a certain place in California where a lot of them ended up. So these native people from Laos ended up fighting with the American government. And so when the American government pulls out of the region, they really need some help. And so they have to make their way on a just treacherous journey through the mountains and the jungles of Laos to the border of Thailand. And then when they get to Thailand, they have to cross the Mekong River. And when they get over there, now they're in a place where there's a refugee camp, a series of refugee camps, as a matter of fact. They have to wait for years for permission to be able to come to the USA. When they are eventually invited in here and start coming here in big numbers in the 1970s and 1980s. As a result, there are huge numbers of Hmong and also Vietnamese people who live in Minnesota today because of this chain migration, right? If you have a relative or a cousin or a friend who ended up in St. Paul and they say it's good, maybe you'll go there too. You might know a prominent member of the community, Sunisa Lee, Suni Lee is what she goes by, and she's very prominent every Olympics year, Summer Olympics. When the gymnastics come on, it's her and Simone Biles are the two stars of the team, and so she is kind of all over national media when that happens, and she's a St. Paul girl, she's from here. All that to say that this is a memorial to commemorate the journey that these people had to take to get to Minnesota. And it goes in linear order from bottom up to top, and it's in the shape of a shrub that you would find in the jungles over here. I will give you a content warning that some of the images I'm about to show you are just really confronting and very brutal. But the thing you need to know is that we are in Minnesota, and Minnesota is a place where I think we like to kind of sweep hard things under the rug and not deal with them in a real way. That is not the same with Southeast Asian culture, where it's much more upfront. And so these confronting images, I think, are an interesting expression of America, right? These different cultures talking to one another. And so down here, we start in the imperial days with some helicopters starting to fly through. And then up here, we got the full-blown war in the second panel with the RPGs shooting at the tanks going into the trenches right over here, bombs dropping from the airplanes up above. And then up here, we have the prisoner of war camps. This is where it's most confronting. You see a man, his hands tied behind his back and a gun being pointed to his chest. I see a person being shot, the dotted line there, with their hands behind their back, with a baby with a knife sticking out of its back. I just want to pause for a moment on that just brutal image over here. Someone weeping next to them. And we see the emaciated body of someone being tortured as they're tied to a flagpole. Someone buried in the ground. Someone being drug away, probably to go into this pit where someone's waiting as well. These are not easily digestible images, but they are real, and they are the real experiences of people who went through a terrible ordeal. And what you're seeing here is an allusion to the story cloths. Hmong story cloths were sold as people were waiting in the refugee camps. Traditionally, that embroidery was the realm of women in Hmong culture, but the men also took part of it because during the refugee camp time, there's not much more to do. But eventually, they make their way here to Minnesota, and you see stories of citizenship. You see classic old Minnesotan there in his parka, not his parka, his farmer belt buckle, greeting a Hmong person in traditional wear into his home. We see a factory where people are going to work over there and finding new life, new opportunity, embracing the American experience. As we make our way around here, I'll just highlight a few other things that are worth mentioning. I mean, it's hard not to see this image and not think of the very recent history of Afghanistan, of the US leaving Afghanistan, as people are flooding on some of the last planes leaving from there. But eventually, the people who do make it, they go from Vietnam and Laos over to Minnesota, that is depicted there. And what happens when they land in a very different land and a very different temperature as well, kind of like today? Well, they arrive ill-prepared in their traditional Hmong clothing, and they're being greeted by a man in this parka with a sign in Hmong right there, greeting them, welcoming them in. Come, welcome to Minnesota. And they come to the churches and the communities of Minnesota, and they make a new life here. We have more Hmong people in Minnesota than anywhere else outside of Southeast Asia. Same story being told here. I just want to highlight for you here, the Mekong River is depicted, and you can see someone drowning, someone barely making it, someone being shot as they attempt to cross the bridge as well, and someone barely making it, trying to use an improvised raft, but then they're staying in a refugee camp. So this is depicting a refugee camp. One of those refugee camps is called Vinai, V-I-N-A-I, which you'll know if you're in the foodie scene here, because nowadays one of the, ironically, most popular restaurants in town, Chef Yia Vang, is a celebrity chef who's from the Hmong community, and he makes Hmong food over there. And up top here we have our capital, which we're right in front of now. We have the farmers market. Agriculture is a big area of expertise for Hmong people, and so when you go to like the Minneapolis farmers market, in the St. Paul farmers market, you see lots of Hmong faces over there. You have stories of education, right? You have stories of community, going to school, having a new life. Is there anything more American than this Hmong memorial? I think not. I love pointing that one out because to me it really speaks to just a side of American history that I think I didn't get as much of in history class. And that leads me to the big memorial. The big one is the World War II memorial over here. And I have some thoughts about this one. KJ, you know this, I'm sorry. I get a bit cynical about the imperialism, the military-industrial complex, the way that we like to tell all of our stories and the tapestry of violence and colonialism and all the rest. Although my cold heart can still be broken through every now and again with a good memorial. Because what are memorials if not places to contemplate, to think about the people who sacrificed so much before? And so there needs to be room at a good memorial for contemplation. And that is not given at this memorial over here. This is the World War II memorial. It's right in front of the Veterans Administration over there, the state government. And so all around us here, we have, what I can see when I look at this is I can see a memorial built by a committee, right? And so over here we have kind of an interesting thought. So this bit of platform juts up to the Capitol. So I'm imagining here, I'm just turning on my art interpretation hat. Oh, okay, so it's like talking about, it's pointing us towards the Capitol. This is where progress happens. This is where we move forward. And it's mirrored over here by what I think was originally designed as a reflecting pool, although I don't see any water in it in the previous years. And so that's cool. Like I could see this working well. And then actually underneath all of this snow is a huge map. See if we can find it. Oh, no, lower north. Up here. Oh, it might be too icy for us to see us. I want to find a county. Come on, counties. Darn. Come on. No, it's too icy. Darn it. Well, underneath this thing is a giant map of Minnesota. and huge letters that say Minnesota Veterans World War II Memorial. You know, good to have a name. But then on top of that, they thought, you know what? It's not enough that we just honor the World War II veterans. We also should honor every other war. And so all the plaques around here, as you look around, are from other wars that Minnesotans fought in, right? So you look around this whole circle, other way actually, KJ, this way. So those bronze plaques you see over there. But I'm sure someone on the committee said, hold on a second, what if someone doesn't know what the Korean War was? So they thought, you know what we need? We need to put up a textbook example. So these little plaques over here, how do I want to do this? Yeah, right here. These give you the history of all the wars, the cost of war. This is about the Hiroshima and Nagasaki over here. By the end of it, in my mind, it doesn't really give me any time to grieve. It doesn't give me any time to appreciate or wonder or think about this place. And so that's my art critique of the World War II Memorial. Next to it is a beautiful Korean War Memorial that's worth your time to see. And that one's a little bit more interpretive. It's like you see a soldier walking away and his silhouette is projected, I think intoning the loss of people who gave everything for the Korean War. And that one to me, okay, yeah, I can start to reflect and think about that a little bit more. My favorite memorial in the world is in Berlin, the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe. This is a Holocaust memorial. And over there, it's these coffin-shaped rectangles that when you go up to it, they're just that high off the ground. You might not even see them, you kind of stumble over. But as you go to the center, it's like a huge block like this. As you go to the center of it, the rectangles go higher and higher up. And what you can't see from the outside of the memorial is the ground drops down. And so it's almost like you're being taken into the pits of despair. And I just think it's a beautiful expression of grief. So that's my high watermark. That's my high watermark for memorials over here. I've been a tour guide since 2011. I've given tours in 30 countries in the world. I've seen a hell of a lot of memorials and a hell of a lot of churches. And that creates a really irritating entitlement where I'm like, this is what I think of this memorial that probably so much went into it. But here we are. Let's cross the street right here. The snow's coming. Production values. How are we doing on battery there, KJ? Fantastic. All right. Doing well. We're going to do our hot swap inside here, I think, in the lift. So, look at this thing. Let me walk in front of you here, KJ, so you can just get that view of this beautiful, beautiful Capitol. This Capitol was so renowned when it opened that Cass Gilbert, the architect of the building, he ends up being recruited to go build 2 other state capitals. One in West Virginia, in the Charleston, West Virginia. That's the same guy who built that. And the other in, I can't remember right now. It's either Alabama or Mississippi, I'm pretty sure. But you can see the other 2 capitals he made, and eventually, towards the end of his life, so he builds this. This opens in 1901. Then he takes a decade for each of the other 2 capitals. And by the 1930s, he gets a promotion up to the federal government. And he gets invited to design what you know as the current United States Supreme Court building. It all started right here in Minnesota. Minnesota has no right to have a capital this grand. This is incredible. This is like a towering achievement for this little piddly outpost state in the middle of the country. I mean, when this is built, Minnesota isn't even 50 years old, right? Minnesota becomes a state in 1858, and this goes up in 1901. And so into this building come all the convictions, all the passions, all just the expressions of the early Minnesotans wanting to tell the rest of the world, this is what Minnesota is. And so they had a big objection when Cass Gilbert said that he was going to use Georgia marble to make this capital. The first all-volunteer regiment of the United States Civil War, that was from Minnesota. And they didn't like the idea of using Confederate marble on that building. And so they objected. There's a huge protest about it. And he ends up relenting and saying, fine, fine, fine. I'll put the interior of the building with granite from Minnesota. But the exterior has got to be Georgia marble. And the Minnesotans agreed to that. But it just lets you know, like, how much tempers ran hot over here. Even like, you know, the 1901 is as far from the civil war as we are today from the Vietnam War, and that people are still trying to maintain their pride over here. Surrounding us right now are some big figures, towering figures of the Minnesota political scene. My favorite thing about this Scandinavian descended place is we got lots of good Scandi names. Here's Knut, Governor Knut Nelson over here. And then you can't quite see him, but over there, farther in the distance, is Floyd Olson. Floyd Olson was from a third party, one of the most successful third parties in United States history. And so he's over there, died very young of cancer. I feel like this building could double for the Capitol. If you're like doing a Hollywood production, you're trying to like recreate the West Wing or something, like it looks like the Capitol, like the US Capitol, I should say. So as we walk into this place, this is a very public building. And so they do have tours of it that are administered by the Minnesota Historical Society. But you can also just wander through without going on a tour, which is fantastic. It should be noted that as we record this, at the end of 2025, it's been a brutal year for Minnesota. This last summer, is when the Speaker of the House was murdered in her home, creating international news by a man named Vance Belter. I think it really, for a lot of people, exposed the danger of our bubbles, right, of the partisanship that is happening over here. And so earlier this year, in front of those statues was a memorial to Melissa Hortman, the speaker who was murdered along with her husband and her dog. There's also a state senator who was shot along with his wife, and while their daughter wasn't shot, her parents covered her body to keep her from being shot. This is a horrendous act of violence. As a result, this is a place that is still reeling with the aftermath of that violence. So that's something to keep in mind as we go in here. If security is a little bit intense over here, that's kind of the context of what's going on. Oh, right through here. Do this way, actually. So I'm coming in here right away, you see the beautiful Capitol Rotunda. Lots of demonstrations happen over here. Lots of public events. In the middle here we have this indigenous-inspired design of the Minnesota Star. Nowadays, kind of the after-the-fact interpretation is that there are M's in it, the letter M, but it's actually from an Ojibwe design reflecting the North Star. And you see this everywhere. In fact, just over here, we have our new Minnesota flag, right here. So on that flag, you see that same star. So the new flag was introduced last year, May 11th of 2024, with this new flag. The old Minnesota flag had a troublesome depiction of a farmer tilling the soil in the foreground with a Dakota person galloping westward in the background. When you go to our history, there's a period when we banished the Dakota people to the west. And so that was one of the reasons why we changed our flag, although it was not without controversy when it happened. So the one area that you're not allowed to film here is inside the Senate chamber, but you can come right up to the gate over here and get the view of this place. Lots of allusions to kind of Greco-Roman times infused with images of Americana as well. Now we'll come back over this way. So Minnesota as a state began initially in 1848, before it was a state, as a territory. The first territorial governor was Governor Ramsey, Alexander Ramsey. We're actually in Ramsey County right now, named for him. As you come through here, you can see like they have an obligation to post publicly when the different committee meetings are. So this whole building is filled with committee meetings, or other buildings next door here where the House and the Senate have other committee spaces. So there's lots going on. I know this is still hard to see. So you can see over here the memorial for Melissa Hortman. Why don't you get a close-up, KJ, of Melissa right here. So she was the Speaker of the House. She had her desk right here in the back corner. You can see the desk still has her name on it with the gavel. Flowers are maintained, and her portrait. In the middle of the night, Vance Belter, a man living south of the Twin Cities, impersonated a police officer, knocked on her door, and shot and murdered her. That's her husband as well, who was murdered, Mark Hortman, right there. They had 2 adult children who, I imagine, are still going through this horrible grief process right now. And you still have this outpouring of grief. Actually, these tables have been here all summer long. On the day that, the Monday after she was murdered in the middle of the night, early Saturday morning. But the Monday after I came here, and these 2 tables were out here. And I think, the way that politics works nowadays is that people, they get their talking points and they take sides and they think about, beating the other side and all that. And this was just a moment of, oh my God. So I came here and I just saw all these staffers just sobbing. It was very real, retching sort of experience. Now, as we come through here, you look over to your left, you'll see what used to be the Minnesota Supreme Court. It no longer is the Minnesota Supreme Court. They moved out. I'll show you where they moved a little bit later. But for now, let's go into these elevators, because this is probably my favorite elevator in Minnesota, right here. So when you're in this elevator, there's this beautiful view. It's a glass elevator, glass windows looking out. You're gonna get a view of the Cathedral of St. Paul when it comes as well. It's pretty impressive. Why don't you go over and get a shot of the cathedral? It's over there. All right, so here we are on the 3rd floor of the Minnesota Capitol. And from right here, there's something interesting I want to show you about our relationship to the things that we make to commemorate our state. Damn it. That would have been so smooth too, but we're gonna keep it. It was one city, one take after all. Go out, go ahead. So what's in here is a mural that used to be over in another room of the Capitol. It has been removed, and around it has been a lot of context that's been added. See this here? Why treaties matter. Self-government in the Dakota and Ojibwe nations. And this gives you a little bit of a hint of what's happening here as we acknowledge the sovereign nations that are around here. Red Lake Reservation up here, with lots of checkerboarding. All those, see how, like down here it's a solid line, but up here the U.S. government came through and broke up a lot of the lands over here. So there are these big Ojibwe reservations up here, and then down below we have these spots that were Dakota reservations but have a much more fraught history in them. And so we talk a lot about the history as we understand it today in the 21st century in this hallway. And the reason that we do that is because there's a mural that was painted originally for this building that has some imagery which is problematic for historians, because it presents a scene that didn't exactly play out the way that the mural depicts. It's right in here. Yeah. And so we have right here this painting depicting the Traverse des Sioux Treaty. Traverse des Sioux Treaty happened an hour southwest of here in St. Peter, Minnesota. And at the treaty site, they actually have a museum that you can go to. And here you see the American government representative shaking hands with the Dakota leader selling away their land. And most of the lands of southern Minnesota. So southern Minnesota, as we know it today, becomes part of the US government as a result of this treaty. That said, the depiction of this scene as one of civility, of one of two sides reaching an agreement, it is confronting to a lot of indigenous peoples who felt they had no other choice than to negotiate with the US government. You see, the Dakotas' relationship with the US government during this period of history is not in isolation. They're able to see what's happening in other parts of the United States where the might of the empire of the US government can come in, and if they don't make a treaty, if they don't make an agreement, the US government is going to start a war. And so, as a result, this treaty is signed, but you might argue it was signed under duress. And even after it was signed, the US government did not live up to its end of the bargain. It did not pay out in the same way that it agreed to, both in financial terms and in food terms. And this is all some of the things that led to the war, the US-Dakota War here in the 1860s. And also the other image which has been ruled problematic is Father Hennepin. So Hennepin Avenue over in Minneapolis, one of the main streets there. He's looking at St. Anthony Falls, which he's blessing in this picture. St. Anthony Falls, of course, a very Western Christian name coming from Europe. He's a Belgian monk living at a time when cultural nativism is in vogue. The idea that these Western people are going to go live with the indigenous people, and captive narratives become all the rage. I've lived in a few places in the world that have these colonial narratives. So Father Hennepin is the one from here. John Smith and Pocahontas is another example of this. Over in Australia, you have William Buckley, a man who goes native, as the English term says. And it's always told through the prism of the white man coming in and learning about the culture over here and gaining a broader understanding. But it's not told from the perspective of the indigenous people around here. For those reasons, these paintings, which were originally in a more prominent part of the building, were brought back here and put into context. So that's what's happening over here. How you doing?
Pretty good. Over the fireplace, opposite of the fireplace.
What's that?
That was over the fireplace
Oh, yeah.
in the reception room, and that was opposite of the fireplace in the reception room.
You remember when it was moved? Yeah. We're doing this video. We did this thing called One City, One Take, where we do a 3-hour video. We walk through the whole of a city. And so we did Minneapolis. We're in the middle of a long one-take video right now.
Very ambitious.
Yeah. You work for MNHS?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I used to work as an interpreter over at the museums across the way.
I'm new, so this is literally the second week of training.
Oh, cool. Very good.
I work at Fort Snelling too.
Oh, so you're learning the tour right now?
I'm making myself flashcards for paintings.
Awesome.
In public spaces.
Cool. I used to work with Michael Rainville, who was out at Fort Snelling, and now he's works for Hennepin Museum as well.
The name sounds familiar, but I've never met him.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well,
Small world.
glad to have you here. Thank you for contributing. So I'm taking all this stuff I'm saying is the stuff I got from my training as well from MNHS.
There's so much.
And the interesting thing, do you mind being on camera?
No, not really. And by the way,
Yeah.
neat side note, I heard you mention John Smith. The portrayal of characters, especially in Disney cartoons, for instance, they come across John Smith, for instance, as a strapping, individual. They don't really convey his height, but it's of at least a moderate to taller stature. He was actually 5'5".
Really?
He was very small.
Huh.
And within the community of Jamestown, he wasn't sort of a part of the landed gentry. He was more of a blue, what we would today call more of a blue-collar sort of individual. So sometimes he was in power, sometimes he was on the fringes. Eventually he had a falling out. So when he went back to England and he came back to what is now the United States, it wasn't to Virginia proper, it was to New England. So his lasting sort of impact on the country is at least as much, if not arguably more, in the New England area versus the Jamestown area.
Are you a colonial historian?
I'm a nerd.
I love it. What's your name?
Mike.
Mike, I'm John. Nice to meet
Nice to
KJ
meet
shooting it. It's worth mentioning. So Mike works just like I used to work for the Minnesota Historical Society, which is a really interesting organization. This is an organization that was founded by the people who founded our state, right? And so you have Alexander Ramsey, the first governor, territorial governor, and then state governor, who is so assured that what he's doing is significant that he creates a historical society and then keeps all the papers that he is doing to honor him and his cohort of people. And this is both interesting for the hubris of it, but also a challenge today for the modern Minnesota Historical Society, because the people who made this organization a reality are also the litigants of a terrible and bloody war between the US government and the indigenous people. Nowadays, this organization is tasked with writing the history of indigenous people. And so how do you do that? How do you circle that square of being the organization that fought a war against the people, but now also telling the history? Does that not also create the same situation that we talk about with Father Hennepin? Well, that's a complicated issue, an issue that Minnesota Historical Society has to reckon with every year. They have lots of indigenous representation. They try to have a lot of indigenous representation, but it's a place where there is, shall we say, like active academic debate about their role in the telling of history. So it's a really interesting institution. They're the best funded state-based research institution in the nation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them when we get to the Supreme Court outside. Nice to meet you, Mike. Oh, thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care.
So as we come through here, this whole space is, this is space for committee meetings, reserved for use by House staff and House members. You can see there's a committee meeting going on right now. We're going to get a shot in there. It's public after all, but they can pull back before they kick us out. And so this is the active work of government happening right here. We actually have a big election year coming up next year. The governor is up for re-election. He's going to be running for his third term. You may have heard of him, Tim Walz. He was a national ticket with Kamala Harris just last year as we filmed this. And he just announced that he's running again a couple months ago. Now what I want to do is take you down into the basement. Something that's fun as you walk through here, though, is like I can see up there in the ceiling, it says spring, and over here is winter. And the art depictions here talk about the harvest. This is, after all, an agricultural space. And so I just love it because, like, here with the springtime, we see the leaves over this way. And then here in the wall, we see the corn. And so while I won't know as much as Mike over there about the history of this place, I just doing my own real-time interpretation here. I see these corn husks and thinking, this is like it's a Greco-Roman institution in terms of its form, it's how it looks. But then it has these uniquely American characteristics and Minnesotan characteristics to it as well. Corinthian columns right here, like you'd see over in the Roman Empire, but then combined with the North Star, the Star of the North, the Minnesota symbol. If you do the tour of the Capitol, which goes all year round, but if you do it in the summertime, there's it's called the Cenotaph, I think? The horses, the sculpture of the horses up front. And in nice weather, they'll actually take you outside. It's pretty cool. All right, now we're gonna go into the basement for two big things I wanna show you over there. And then we'll make our way out of here. I love these. See these? Maybe you see these mail slots? Put mail in there. It's not in service now, but it used to be you'd put letters, you go straight down there and get distributed out. Back in our paper days. All right, so now going from the third floor to one ground basement. Big, tall building. And when we get there, we're going to be able to see a little bit of our Germanic heritage still ringing forth, because this building was built by German immigrants wanting to, combine their German ancestry also with their pride of the new American frontier. And so what do? They actually build a pretty unique facility. Yeah. It definitely has more like a crypt-like feel down here. You can see some of this is cool. I think we might have to go one floor below, actually. There is a basement to this one. I think we might be one too high. I think the elevator doesn't go any lower than this. Just check. Over here. Oh no, here it is. Ooh, thank you. We'll mute that for this section anyway, but. All right, here we have it. This is the German beer hall of the Minnesota Capitol. You believe it? Yes, this looks like Germany, right? They should have words in German here. Now, my German isn't good enough to know what this says. What is that? Nerger nicht der Freude nur steht offen dieses. I can't read that Latin text, my God. This painting actually only was revealed in the last few decades because they covered over the German writing during World War I and World War II. And on top of that, there's references to drinking over here. And so with Prohibition, they covered over the references to drinking as well. They've since opened it up again. But I have to tell you, I'm super disappointed by what it is nowadays, which is, here's where they put the menus up here. There's the cafeteria. Can we not make this a beer hall again, guys? Come on, let's make the beer hall come back. How cool would it be to have a licensed beer hall right here on the site? Now, I mean, I think I know the reason why this isn't a beer hall. Look at this beautiful staircase here as well. And that's because you don't want your lawmakers getting drunk on the job and going to make laws again. But at the same time, like, how cool of a venue would this be? Right over here. Come on, Minnesota lawmakers. You did it once before. You liberalized our drinking laws. Let's do it once again. So we've come up a level from where we were just a moment ago. So now we're more in the regal part of the Capitol. This is one of the big hearing rooms. A grand space, the huge circular table in there. I don't think it'll be open. I'd love to have those lights on, but as we make our way around this building, you all see these portraits, right? Wendell Anderson, 33rd governor of Minnesota from 1971 to 1976. So you have all these governors' portraits, official portraits over here. And a lot of them have symbolism in them, references to what was accomplished during the term. Probably the best known governor in Minnesota, at least from a national perspective, is someone I'd like to show you now. But, I'm too high. Let me have a look. Oh, it's over here, that's right. It's a bit confusing. All right, so more governors we can see, just on our walk of governors. We have Rudy Perpich, he was governor 2 terms, so 76 to 79, and then 83 to 91. So he was governor when I was born. Alki, I don't remember him, 79 to 83, 1-term governor. Arnie Carlson, he's kind of a legendary, famous guy right here. With his U of M jacket on. So now we're entering more the modern era of governor portraits. But the best known one, I would say, the man right here, Jesse the Body Ventura. That's what his wrestler name was. Jesse Ventura was a wrestler. He ran in 1998, and I think Minnesota does not get the credit that it deserves, for better or worse, for cutting a path for Donald Trump because of Jesse Ventura. You see, Jesse Ventura was a third-party candidate, and stop me if this sounds familiar. He comes out against the establishment politicians, and he just says anything off the cuff, and he doesn't follow the normal rules of politics. And he ekes in at the last minute by getting a majority-minority vote. So the Republicans and Democrats each have their candidates running in '98. They each get 33.3% of the vote. Jesse Ventura gets 33.4% of the vote and goes on to serve as the governor of Minnesota. In the background of his portrait, you'll see a few allusions to his tenure. There's a train back over here, and that looks like a freight train. I believe there's a light rail train in here too. Maybe I'm wrong about that. All right, well, that's the allusion to it. So the light rail, he helped get the light rail, the trains back to Minnesota. That's where we got rid of them. You also see him leaning on that famous statue of the thinker. During his campaign, he appeared in the nude in one of his campaign ads in the thinker pose as he rebranded from Jesse the Body Ventura to Jesse the Mind Ventura was what he went for. He caused a lot of consternation because, I mean, he really was being attacked on all sides from the traditional party politics, the Democrats and the Republicans. He also was pretty crass. Like, he really didn't like the media all that much. He changed the look of the press badges that were given out to members of the media to say media jackals on it. There were jackal passes. He was an outspoken guy who was going to say what he was going to say. He also was going to smoke what he was going to smoke. He liked smoking stogies, just a cigar man. And just over in this area here is where the governor's office is. So the governor has a mansion and there's also a bunch of other offices, but they have a room for the governor to be able to do their work from. So it's a cabinet right here. There's a private office to the side of that for when the governor's trying to meet with legislators, get things through. And this is there's three parts of the Minnesota government, right? The legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And so technically this isn't his space, but they still give him a little office here. And so all these governors have been out here. And Governor Ventura would enjoy a cigar every now and again. And when you look on the wall right here, you can still see where he would ash his cigar. You see that right there? I can put my flashlight on it so you can see it as well. A little bit of governor history right there. That's the cigars put out by Jesse Ventura as he's trying to get laws through the books. Got recognized through the window there, I could see. All right, let's continue out this way. So that's currently, Governor Walz's office over there. You see all this work being done. It's so cool. I love that. The work of government happening right in front of us over here. We also have around us the work of construction for the work of government that way. That's currently under construction as the House Office Building. Whew, the snow is picking up, isn't it? Very, very high public investment in that building going right there. And that's the Senate Office Building over that way. So Senate over there, House over there. When this building was constructed, it wasn't supposed to have separate buildings, but the way that modern government works, right? Can't spare any expense for these fancy offices. This is me being a bit cynical, but the original envisioning for this building was that this would be the place for all of Minnesota's government, right? And so this would not just be the place for the legislature, but also the Supreme Court and the governor's office and the railroad offices, and even that Minnesota Historical Society I mentioned before that that Alexander Ramsey had, that was in here. And then the story of Minnesota and its history is also the story of us like having these different offices move away more and more. Let's get out from under this awning. I think the eaves of this building are making it snow harder on us than it needs to be. Watch your step. It's very icy here, KJ. And his marble is also very unforgiving on, it's very slippery. Okay. So cutting through the kind of secret entrance here, we're directly below where we entered this building originally. We're gonna come out and see another building. So this whole complex was supposed to house all of Minnesota government. But then the first group to want to leave here was the Minnesota Historical Society, MNHS. And so being the first one to leave, they just put a building next door, right over there. Beautiful building, everything is hunky-dory. But then over time, slowly but surely, the House built their office off-site, the Senate built their office off-site, and the railroad office, and all these other state offices, the Veterans Office, moved out of the building. And then by the time you get to the late 20th century, 1980s, there starts to be murmurings about the Supreme Court, the Judicial, not being happy with their digs. We have a whole chamber in there for the Supreme Court, but there's just an uncomfort with having to make laws that affect the lawmakers who are working right next door, I guess. And so they say, we would really like to have our own facility as well. And so there starts to be a discussion about where they would have their facility. And they said, no, but we need to be close to the seat of power, right? This is the capital after all. And so they say, the place that we would like to be is right there. To which the Minnesota Historical Society says, but we live there. You can't be there because that's where we live. To which the Supreme Court says, well, that's where we want to be. And so the Minnesota Historical Society finds themselves in a, let's say, strong negotiating position, right? Another branch of government wants their space, and so they are able to negotiate a pretty sweetheart deal with the state of Minnesota. $80 million, I believe, last time I checked, is the annual operating budget of the Minnesota Historical Society, the best funded state-based historical society in our nation. This is a building which I would normally just point out to you. You can see over there, but the snow obscures it, so you're not going to be able to see it. But that's the headquarters of MNHS. They have another museum in Minneapolis. They have 26 historic sites across our state. And so it's a pretty amazing thing to be able to have MNHS right here. As far north as Grand Portage, and as far south as the petroglyphs, the Jefferson petroglyphs. There's a lot to see when it comes to the Minnesota Historical Society. I'm a proud member myself. I'm a big believer in their organization. Of course, being a historical society, so as a result, this is the Supreme Court nowadays. Originally, Minnesota Historical Society. Being built as a historical society, it would make sense you would put historic objects over here, like this one. This, I can try to not fall over. The ship to Christopher Columbus, discoverer of America. So the question is this: where is Christopher Columbus? Can you discover him? You don't have to step up here, it's fine. The answer comes in the recent past, because in 2020, we had this reckoning. This is reckoning with our relationship with our racial history around here. And Christopher Columbus, who has become this symbol of imperialism, was deemed by a lot of activists to not be appropriate to be so close to the Capitol. So he stood on that pedestal, and they ripped him down in this big performative display. Let's walk over this way. The interesting thing about this, though, is that when Columbus went up, he wasn't meant to be a symbol of imperialism or colonialism. He was simply a symbol of Italians. Because Italians had come here in big numbers and were facing lots of anti-Italian hate and racism. And so what they like to do is wave their hands, say, excuse me, we're also Americans, and we actually helped you guys discover this country. You know, heavy asterisk on the word discover. But they used Christopher Columbus, a man who was born in Italy, as their way to say, we are part of the American experience as well. And so all across America, these statues of Christopher Columbus start going up. And that was one of them, right over there. It's part of the attempt to increase understanding, acceptance, and appreciation from our immigrant neighbors. And yet, this is the interesting thing about history, is I think a lot of us, myself included, when we study history, we think that it is, you know, inside a display case and locked in time and never changing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I had a really good chat with Bill Convery. He's one of the researchers. I had a research over at the Minnesota Historical Society for my TV show, Hidden Middle, which you can see on my channel as well. And in it, he said this line that I've quoted all the time since. He said, you know, revisionist history is used as a negative term, but the act of studying history is revising history. You are constantly revising our understanding of what history is. And Christopher Columbus is a perfect symbol for that. Speaking of which, when it comes to revisionist history, when this thing was put up here, about 40 years ago, you can see that they were really hopeful for the future. As you look at the names on here, you see many names of suffragettes, of women in leadership positions, because this is the Suffragette Memorial of Minnesota right here. And you can imagine that when this thing goes up, there's an ambition, a hope that it's not going to be that far away that Minnesota has a female leader. I'm here to report to you in 2025, we have not yet reached that mountaintop, but the Women's Memorial is right here, and we still wait for the day when a woman becomes governor. We have a lot of prominent women in leadership roles today in Minnesota, but they just haven't reached the highest office yet. So our two senators in the US Senate are women, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. The two Democrats vying for Tina Smith's seat are both women, Angie Craig and Peggy Flanagan, who Peggy Flanagan will have the extra notable moment of being the first Indigenous senator from Minnesota. So yeah, there's prominent women, even the Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, who was just murdered, and Erin Murphy is the Senate leader as well, two women as well. So we think of ourselves as a bit of a progressive state, and yet we haven't quite gotten to the point where we've gotten a governorship for women quite yet. As we make our way down the Capitol Mall here, you see more memorials. So back there you see the flag coming out from the snow. That's that World War II memorial. And that big marble slab over there is a Korean War memorial, which we didn't see but I made reference to. Next to us here, this wall is the Workers' Memorial. Solidarity. Solidarity now, solidarity forever. And some of the memorials that we missed on the other side is a memorial to the creator of the NAACP. Let's keep going straight here. There's a memorial to the Vice President of the United States, Hubert Humphrey, who started his career in Minneapolis as a community organizer, and then went on to become mayor of Minneapolis, U.S. Senator, Vice President, and unsuccessfully challenged Richard Nixon for the presidency in 1978. And then we also have a memorial to Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh is known for three main things in his life. I mean, the biggest one I would say is he's the first man to cross the Atlantic on his own in an airplane unaided. So that's a huge moment for him. He comes from Minnesota. That's the original story. He enters notoriety later when his baby is tragically kidnapped and killed, the Lindbergh baby. And then during the rise into World War II, he ends up being quite sympathetic to a German named Adolf, whose Nazi sympathies are well documented over here. He's one of these people that I think in recent times in history, I think even as recently as 5-10 years ago, people have started saying, oh, we're not going to talk about him anymore. I love talking about him because he's so complex, right? There's so much there of like, he did this thing that was the bravado and impressive, but then he also did this other thing which is anti-American, which is siding with the Nazis. And so I love the way that like history, we're going to go straight here, history doesn't have good guys and bad guys, right? History has people in all of their complexity, and Charles Lindbergh is a great example of that. Let's go back to Hubert Humphrey for a second, because Hubert Humphrey is a huge political leader in our nation. He's a huge civil rights leader. After John F. Kennedy is assassinated in November of 1963, the vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, rises up for the presidency. So who's going to take his place? Who's going to be the vice president after that? Well, the conventional wisdom was that it would be Bobby Kennedy, JFK's brother. It would make sense, sort of sense to have the family lineage carry on. One problem though, Bobby Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson could not stand each other. Bobby Kennedy had come from the East Coast. LBJ saw him as this elite, out of touch, entitled guy. Meanwhile, Bobby Kennedy saw LBJ as this just creature of the Senate, this good old boy in every sense of the way. He was crass, he was rough, and so they didn't get along at all. And so in the summer of 1964, leading up to the Democratic Convention, there was a big discussion in the media about who the VP pick was going to be. And wouldn't you know it, at an event over at Minnehaha Falls, it's over in Minneapolis, Hubert Humphrey shows up to host LBJ. And just a few months later, Hubert Humphrey would be named as the Vice President of the United States. Hubert Humphrey was also instrumental in passing the Civil Rights Act, along with Martin Luther King and other leaders at the time. There's been, after the fact, a lot more criticism of Hubert Humphrey in that he negotiated, right? There was a agreement that he made at the Democratic Convention to count black votes, which was, in his mind, Hubert Humphrey's mind, the achievements, but he counted them as less than white votes. So that's something that I think people are starting to take stock on and think, was that a trade-off he should have made, or did he betray his base by doing so? We're leaving the Capitol complex now. Actually, let's have a look. Oh, nice. Come on, look real quick. Let's see if we can see the Capitol through the snow. You can just see it over there. I just get the dome. Well, now we're gonna cross over this way, over into downtown. This building over here is a Ramsey County building. It's actually where you go to get your birth certificates. So when my daughter was born, she was born here in St. Paul, I had to go over there and get her birth certificate printed off over there, bring the hospital paperwork and swap it over there. So, a lot of government buildings around here at the city and county level on this side. City Hall is gorgeous and over that way. You know what, I wonder if we can get to see City Hall on this tour. I bet you we can. The only issue is the one take. I don't know if they'll let us go through security with a camera. Might be worth a shot, because then we can end in Union Depot, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna try. Ending in Union Depot. All right. That's a ways away for now, though. We still got some places to go. Like over here, we have the History Theater. So all the plays that they do here are, from history. They do original theater right here. The thing that's most notable to me about this space, though, is not the current iteration of the building that's here, but what was once here. That Capitol that we saw, that was the third iteration of the Minnesota State Capitol. The first iteration was right here. Of course, it wasn't this building. Instead, it was a building that burned down in a fire. One of my favorite quotes that I've ever read about the history of Minnesota talks about the fact that the reporter had never before seen the legislature so quickly adjourn than when the building was literally on fire. All Capitol buildings have law libraries in them. It's like if you're changing the laws, you need to be able to see what the law currently is and what the history of law changes are. But law libraries are also tinderboxes that can start on fire quite easily. Watch out for the puddle. And so this building started on fire and burnt down. Now they quickly selected a place for the next Capitol. It's right behind us over there. You can see our Capitol we've just come from. But in between when it burnt down and that building got built, they needed to have a temporary Capitol. And so that second Capitol is just down the way where the Palace Theater is now. We'll see that in just a bit. For myself, if we switch sides here, KJ, across the way, I have lots of strong memories of this building with the orange columns on it, because growing up, this was the Science Museum of Minnesota. They had a big iguana outside made of rail ties that you'd play on, you'd sit on, and all that. And then it moved out. I just like to mention that because the building that is currently occupied, the former Science Museum of Minnesota, is very appropriately, I guess, the Church of Scientology, as you can see on the letters over there. So if you want to go get your thetans tested, head on over that way. Pivoting over this way, we can see the Fitzgerald Theater. The Fitzgerald Theater is gorgeous. It's the oldest continuously operating theater in the state of Minnesota, right here, this one here. And it's most notably the home for years of a little radio show on public radio called A Prairie Home Companion. That is the old-timey talk show. It was like a variety show led by Garrison Keillor. It's great to listen to. In fact, if you've not seen it or heard of it, a good little shortcut for it is they made a movie out of it back in 2006. And the movie, also called A Prairie Home Companion, stars Garrison Keillor, but has a massive cast as well. So it has Lindsay Lohan and Meryl Streep and Woody Harrelson and John C. Reilly. And it's fun, and they film it here. It's actually the last film directed by Robert Altman. So if you're a big cinephile, you'll know that name. He's a famous director. But he was so old, they couldn't actually get insurance on him to make the film unless they got an assistant director to come in. And so they got one of the greatest actors of this generation today, Paul Thomas Anderson, the creator of movies like Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, and Punch Drunk Love, my favorite movie. He was the AD for this movie. I filmed right over here. Nowadays, it's a great venue. So there's a Fitzgerald Theater, but you'll notice you view their full calendar at firstavenue.com. Viewers of my Minneapolis video will know from what I talked about First Avenue. That is a famous venue that you see over in downtown Minneapolis. But during COVID, oh, look at that, Travel by Turtles is coming. That's cool. Sorry, distracted, I shouldn't see that. The First Avenue, the venue that Prince made famous, the venue where Purple Rain was filmed, they went on a land grab during COVID because they're an independently run music venue and they didn't want these places to die. And so they bought them up, I imagine for cheap, and now they own a ton more music venues all around the Twin Cities right here. Places like the Fine Line in Minneapolis, the Palace Theater right around the corner from where we are now, and the Fitzgerald are all managed by First Avenue and not, thankfully, by places like Live Nation, Ticketmaster, et cetera, et cetera. All right, it's getting pretty snowy out here, isn't it? I'm looking on camera.
It's looking great.
Good, good.
Barely see him. Help it.
I know, right? Look, we need some sunglasses here, some sea goggles. But actually, let's take a break from this. I'll give you some refuge. We come up these stairs. All right, not just because of the weather. I did want to show you a skyway while we were down here as well. Wow, it is snowing out there. We're gonna take the scenic route to get to the Skyway. So I'm going to the 10th floor, just so you can turn the camera over here, KJ, and get this great view of downtown. There we go, right out here. St. Paul is it's a smaller, more compact downtown, but it's also a more preserved downtown than Minneapolis. And so it's a beautiful town to walk through, and the Skyways operate a little bit differently here as well. So from here I can see the Landmark Center with that pointed roof over there. We're gonna make our way over to that building and then towards City Hall as well. First the Skyway, see the Skyway from where we are right now? We're gonna make our way through that. We have this incredible Skyway network here in the Twin Cities. In fact, Minneapolis is home to the largest continuous section of Skyways in the world, 9.5 miles of Skyway connecting downtown. St. Paul's a little bit like a little sibling of Minneapolis when it comes to Skyways. It's not as complete, but it's still pretty impressive. So there's a lot of effects that happen when you have a Skyway network. All right. Not quite. YouTube. And so a lot of effects of having Skyways around here, one of which is like, if you're in an office building, you don't need to have parking inside the building. You can have it 2 buildings over. In this case, we just came out of the parking ramp there, which is for the Children's Museum, which we're going to go into just over this way. Now in Minneapolis, if you watched my Minneapolis video, you maybe saw I got kicked out of the Skyways over there when we were filming. Bit of a confrontation. That's not going to happen over here. Why? Because St. Paul's Skyways are maintained and managed by the city. So this is kind of a public-private partnership over here. And so this is a place that's more welcoming of people just trying to get out of the cold, to be honest. Also welcoming of pigeons. You can see a lot of guano over here, but in the springtime every year, you get baby pigeons being born. And every one of the Skyways has, is this one here? No, not quite, but like the pigeons like nest on top of nest, on top of nest, on top of nest. Now, Skyways are built for commerce and for workers. Commerce went the way of the internet, and so that's not really needed as much. And the workers went to work from home after COVID. And so the Skyways are kind of in a period of figuring out what they want to be. So we entered our Skyway here, and then we came to here, and I'm gonna walk you just out of the Children's Museum this way. But we could stay in here, walk all the way down here through the Skyway, connect this way, and into Union Depot, onto the train, into Chicago without ever going outside. Right? Kind of crazy. Now, we are a city, we're an education city. We have lots of museums around here. One of my favorite ones that I go to a lot is this one because I've got young kids. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old right now. And so as you look at the playful light bringing us in, leading the way, there's a little let's play stickers on the floor telling you what to do. Leap over the troll. Spin around in a circle. Do your silliest walk. Hop 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Pretend you're a dragon. You did it. So if we were going to the Children's Museum, we'd go that way. But we're not. So we'll go this way instead. So it's really, the Children's Museum is made for like young kids. Like once you get to about 8 years old, the Science Museum in Minnesota is probably a more appropriate place to go. This is really good for kids who want to go play pretend in like a makeshift village. You have like a little town where you can be a post officer and a firefighter and that sort of thing. We're just gonna swivel around here and out the door. Once more into the breach, my friends. Ready? Ah! You'll notice here, look at that beautifully maintained bike path over here. That's the Capitol Bike Trail right here. So they do actually plow it. So you can tell from the snowbanks here that they have snowplows come through just to maintain the bike infrastructure here. Minneapolis and Portland kind of compete for best biking city in America. St. Paul does okay, but the fact they're so close to Minneapolis means there's a lot of propulsion to try to make this place a better bike city as well. Right here, I can already smell what I see up this way. That is Candyland. So I'm smelling the caramel corn. Oh, it's really good. You know what I might do, actually? I'm gonna buy some candy corn, or some caramel corn, rather. If you just stay right here, KJ, head right here, and I'm gonna go inside and buy some. I'll be right back. Hello. I got a small bag of Chicago mix, please. Hiya. That's all, thanks. Appreciate it.
You like a bag?
No, it's okay. Thanks so much. You too. So this is like an old school candy store, and this bag is still warm from the Chicago mix popcorn that I just bought here. This popcorn is trademarked to this place. You wouldn't think that a place in St. Paul, Minnesota owns a copyright for Chicago mix, but indeed they do. And so if you, as a candy maker, try to sell Chicago mix, they will send you a cease and desist over here as the owners of this trademark. So what is Chicago mix? Well, if you didn't know, it is taking all the kinds of popcorn and mixing them all together. So inside there, you're gonna see some caramel corn, some natural popcorn, and some cheesy popcorn. A set of flavors you would not think goes together, but it does. Want to have some? There we go. Gotta keep the cameraman happy, you know? Isn't it good? Yeah. So that's Candyland. Actually, they have one in Minneapolis too. The Minneapolis one is newer, but that's the kind of place where like, you literally see them hand dipping like the caramel apples and making the different nut mixes and things in there. It's pretty great.
Another handful of that.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely. I can't carry it around, so I'm gonna throw it in the bin if we don't eat it. Oh. The Palace Theater is right over here. That's that live music venue I was telling you about that got bought by First Avenue. So right now it says see you next year because I guess they don't have a show coming up right now. But there's some big gigs that come up here. I think the last one I saw recently was Iron and Wine came through. All right, last handful I gotta put away so I can tour.
Fine.
You gotta get back to work, mate. Okay. So, pan up here, look up at the top of that building. This building is gorgeous. This is the Hams building. Hams, you may know from the beer that they make, but they're a prominent family in St. Paul. And they also have a space in the American lexicon thanks to some ads that they did from Campbell Mithun. Campbell Mithun's an ad agency that made the Hams Bear from the land of the sky blue waters. Here, look at this. Ooh, nope, right there. See? From the land of the sky blue waters. That was the slogan that would come, the omniscient narrator would come on at the start. Say, from the land of the sky blue waters comes Ham's beer. And of course, you know, not done today, they had a cartoon character advertising beer. Talk about things that wouldn't be done in the 21st century. But he was an iconic bit of America, right? Ham's has since been, the brand has been bought by one of the big global multinational companies. So you see Ham's beer around here. It occupies the same space as like PBR, right? Pabst Blue Ribbon or Old Milwaukee beer. It's not like it's good beer, but it's nostalgic. The brand is nostalgic for people who grew up here. It's also, though, this family that made it rich built this beautiful building, which we're going to check out now. Oh, come on. No! Go around. All right, so Loon Cafe is right here. It's been around forever. They have one in downtown Minneapolis as well. Home of the Grape Ape cocktail. This is a good bar. So it's a no-nonsense bar, neighborhood bar. Next to it is this very fancy restaurant. In fact, I'd say my favorite restaurant in the Twin Cities if I want to spend a lot of money. That's right here, Meritage. Meritage. I hear people locally calling it Meritage. I always said it's Meritage. It's French, so put in comments what you think it's called. But it's a French restaurant. So you go in there, they got amazing oysters over there, the French onion soup. I had beef tartare there. I've been there exactly one time. I'm trying to work my way through all the fine dining restaurants, but I've got young kids, so it's a bit hard to do. But it's a great restaurant to go to. Oh, why are you closed? That's new to me. Oh, someone's coming out. That's good. Hey, thank you.
Another?
What's that?
Another?
Another?
You wait for another?
I'm going to Jaime's Haberdashery over here. Thank you.
Oh, no.
So we're just coming through here to cut this way, but I mean, the building is just striking, right? And at the end of it, you have this fantastic men's store that I want to show you. But I haven't given them the heads up, so make sure they're comfortable. Hey, mate. How you doing? I'm a tour guide that comes through here every now and again. I'm filming a YouTube video for today. Do you mind if I just shoot my video? I'm just cutting through here. Huh, cool. So this is Jaime's Haberdashery. This is like jumping into a time machine, I think. I feel weird introducing the store in front of the store staff over here. Do you want to, would you care to talk about the store at all, the video?
I've got someone maybe better.
All right, cool, thanks. And I mean, appreciate you. I mean, look at the hats up here. This is retail like they didn't used to do it, right? So it's a stunning store to come get tailored suits done over here. And they also have a barbershop and all sorts of other stuff. Oh, there's the guy I know over there. I come through here every now and again with my walking tours. Hey, mate. I don't mean to ambush you. We're shooting a YouTube video here. We're doing a 3-hour unbroken take of St. Paul. And so you're like hour 2 right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I just wanted to talk about your store, but then I feel weird talking about your store in front of your staff right here.
No, you can.
Well, I'd rather you talk. Can you just tell us what this place is? What it's all about? Where are we?
We are at Jaime's Haberdashery, St. Paul. We have a location here and also in Red Wing.
Yeah.
It originated in 1921 by a gentleman, and the current proprietor, I should say, is the grandson of Jaime, which is Andler is the last name, and they are from Russia, and the sewing was in their family for 200 years. Started in 1921 on Robert Street. So his grandfather started the company sewing, making garments for folks back in the day, doing hemming, doing all of those sorts of things. And there was a period where it went away. And then Anthony, the current owner, started in the Artist Mercantile making bags, which we currently make today as part of the service that we have, along with the barbershop, along with the tailor shop. Businesses emerge into a lot of custom clothing for men and women. We do outside tailoring as well.
I know you did women's clothes as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's kind of relatively new for us. We have shoe shines. There's a space in the back. It's a small events space that during the Jazz Festival, we are one of the venues for that piece.
Cool.
We will have a cabaret coming up in February. Don't quote me on the date.
Okay, cool.
So we're
Where can people find out about this? This video's been
they
going
will
on for a
find.
while.
You can find out about it on, of course, social media. We're old folks, so we're trying to learn how to use social media.
I can help you with that. Yeah, give me a ring.
Which, thank you very much. Hint.
Yeah, right.
So we're.
We'll tag you in this. And your name for people who want to come see you?
My name is Keith Dorset. I am what we would call the district manager.
Yeah.
Those fancy titles I don't know about.
I mean, just now, when your colleague just came and got you over there, you're sitting at like an old-timey desk there doing like accounts payable or something, I
Yeah, it's
imagine,
old
right?
people. It's people that are just, they I look the part, I act the
love
part,
it.
and I
love
have
it.
about 39 years of doing this business. I guess you just kind of fall into it. And we're on the corner of, we're at on St. Peter. We're on 6th and St. Peter.
Yeah.
And we're kind of we're in the, again, I would say the historic Ham building.
Yeah.
And we're working real hard as being good stewards here on the corner with Anthony, I always screw up the name, Scarvano, which is a great store here, Landmark Jewelers.
Yep.
And so we have some visibility.
Yeah.
Parking is across the street, and which was the old, I would say, I think the Infor building, because I think sometimes being in downtowns is always, listening. Where do we park? Where do we park?
I think the audience for this video is going to be more national, so I don't think people will even know as much.
Well,
we're on your YouTube
after
channel.
they see you and I,
Yeah,
they might want to come and visit
I like
us and
it.
hang out with
I like
us.
it.
So we're hoping that it happens. And you can purchase items on our website, Hymies.com.
Cool.
We do short films, so if you see me on there with muscles and everything like that, that is actually me. That is not AI.
All right, I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up now.
You didn't know that.
Do you mind if I do a little loop around here?
Please
here?
do,
Oh,
please
thank
do.
you so much, Keith. Good to
Welcome
see you. Appreciate you.
No.
So I mean, this is just such a cool shop. I think in our era of fast fashion right now, we just lack places like this to come to. I'll see a lot of groups of men come through, bachelor parties, like getting ready for the wedding. They'll get fitted for the suits over here. You can get your shave before the wedding, your haircut right over here, shoe shine spot, barber shop just over this way, yes. And then you come through this way, and this is where they shoot some video content over here, have cabarets and all that. Look at this old bar, it's beautiful space. The owner of this place is quite the collector, so you get a lot of stuff to look at around here. They also have a little cigar shop as well in here. Even look at this, even the changing rooms, look how classy these are. The portraits on the wall and the old vest up here, let's do it differently here. This is perfect. We were aiming for the snow. We wanted to show the wintry scene. That was the goal of it. So I'm very happy. I did this time because we're trying to keep the audience. So I think you look at the YouTube graph and it goes boom when I spend too long in one building. So, but I'll come back. Maybe we'll do a special video on that soon. Thanks, Keith. See you later. What a guy, huh? I mean, I feel kind of bad because I didn't remember his name. I've been seeing him for 4 years now. I need to commit that to memory. But it's one of my favorite parts about being a tour guide. I just kind of feel like I've got my finger on the pulse of the city a little bit. I have this sense of entitlement, you might say. Just walk in and be like, I'm a tour guide, I'm doing a thing. And then here I'm having chats with the people who make our city great, right? So I think it's awesome. I mean, full disclosure, I'm a resident of Minneapolis these days. Keep it quiet. But I started when I first came back in 2021. I lived here in St. Paul. We're gonna go this way. I lived just off of Lexington and Grand Avenue. And so I got to get the feel of St. Paul for about a year and a half I was over there. Now here we're coming into the Landmark Center. I think a lot of people think of this as the courthouse, the old courthouse, because that's what it was for years and years and years. And now it's this museum. It's kind of open museum that you can just kind of come into and check out. Watch your step, it's slippery. So it's this beautiful space that we have over here that they have for events and all that. So the Ramsey County Historical Society is based here. They do constantly changing events this way. We're gonna take the elevator right up here. Come back over here, KJ. favorite things in this building is like this carpet on the ceiling. You're like, oh, this is drab. And then look down, beautiful mosaic tile on the ground. So this was a federal office building for years and years and years. It's now a place you can rent out for weddings, corporate events, functions, and they have various offices through here as well. So I'm going to show you a bit of this history through here. I always do this, but it's going to work well for our video. I go up one level too high, so we'll go down one. Just going to look down the stairs here. Pretty grand. So it's known by a lot of people as the courthouse because it's the place where the courts were, but it's not its designated meeting. It's actually just a general federal office building. And so right here, we have the exhibit, Uncle Sam worked here, and they have these all over, giving you an idea of what happens here. So you see on the second floor, they have on the third floor and the fourth floor what they have in each place. So stuff about prohibition, citizenship. The reason they have something on prohibition here is that Congressman Andrew Volstead, who's a U.S. congressman in D.C., is compelled as a junior congressperson to to introduce legislation that allowed for prohibition. So Minnesota did that. Now from here, you can see the grand atrium that they have down here. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous space. And so it's beautiful for weddings and events and that sort of thing. Let's go this way, KJ. This is my favorite room in the whole building, though, because this is the room, if you stay down there and shoot me up here, where you'd have the appellate court. This is the federal appellate court right here. And so the judge would stand from down here. Right behind you can see a portrait of one of the judges, Judge Stanburn, over there. And Judge Stanburn is such a well-known guy, well-respected guy, that upon his retirement, look at this over here, there's a bunch of letters that he receives. One of those letters is from the U.S. president. That's the signature of Dwight Eisenhower right here, congratulating him on his retirement on May 18th, 1959, on that White House stationery here. So this is a place where it's an appellate court. It's where you bring your case higher up in the judicial system. My favorite story that happens here is the story of a prominent feminist from the 19-teens. Being a feminist in the 19-teens, it's hard work, right? You don't have the era of mass media, so you have to make your way around from city to city, doing whistle-stop tours, making speeches. My favorite version of this is a woman named Rose Pastor Stokes, who is freed in this room after being charged with sedition. So she's a woman who's going from city to city, town to town, talking about things like access to abortion or women's rights to vote, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just right over here in this space that she writes, that we profile her story where she writes a letter to the Kansas City Star. So she's given a speech, the Kansas City Star covers her visit. She's not happy with the coverage. She writes, to the Star, a headline in the evening's issue of the Star reads, Mrs. Stokes for government and against war at same time. I am not for the government. In the interview that follows, I am quoted as having said, I believe the government of the United States should have the unqualified support of every citizen in its war aims. I made no such statements, and I believe no such thing. No government which is for the profiteers can also be for the people. The government is for the profiteers. That sentence right there, that got her thrown into jail for sedition in 1918. Remember, this is wartime, and this country has a long and storied history of retracting civil liberties during times of war and bringing them back in peacetime. And this is one example of that. She goes on, I expect my working class point of view to receive no sympathy from your paper, but I do expect the traditional courtesy of publication by the newspapers of a signed statement of correction, which even our most Bourbon papers will grant. Bourbon Democrats, which she's referring to, the conservative wing of the Democrats, will be extended to this statement by yours. Yours truly, Rose Pastor Stokes. What a badass, right? But that letter gets her sent in jail for 2 years. She waits in jail for her appeal to be heard, and it's eventually heard here. She is freed in this room. And now it's commemorated at that plaque over there. With this little bit of history here. Can a letter be treason? There's a picture of her. There's a great biography of Rose Pastor Stokes that came out in 2018. That's worth reading. I've not got the whole thing, but it's just a really interesting slice of like, what does it mean to be a feminist in a different era? Now, let's look at this here first. This is a picture of a bunch of people with their hands in the air because they're pledging allegiance to the United States as new citizens, new US citizens. I felt like I belonged, the headline reads here. And the reason is that this is the room where citizenship would be administered. People would take their oaths right in here. Just a gorgeous space, and very different than the room across the way as well. You have that balcony up there looking down on us. It's a beautiful room. The federal courts do still exist here in St. Paul, but they moved to a more modern building, a more secure building in another part of the city. But you can still come to this historic space and be able to see it. A quick addition to that thing about Andrew Volstead, the congressperson who had to introduce the prohibition legislation. He's from northern Minnesota originally, and we saw fit here in the Twin Cities to honor him by opening a bar. And there's a bar in Uptown which goes by Volstead's Emporium. And so you can go there and pay respect to the man with the drink, which I love. So. We're going to come out of here and then go over to Rice Park next. It's kind of the epicenter of the arts area of downtown, the going out area. Watch your step in the slippy. Woo-hoo-hoo! You know that thing I was saying earlier about over on Summit Avenue, we had buildings trying desperately to look more European, right? Well, I mean, this building is an example of it. If you look up at those turrets that are there, what is this building trying to do if not to emulate the Gothic castles of like Bavaria, right? So this is a neo-Gothic building, neo-classical building, you might say. It's meant to look old. It's not that old. It's built in the 1890s. And one of the things they did in this era is they would put skylights on, because glass is one of the most expensive building materials. And so put skylights on as a way to convey wealth and prosperity, especially if you're trying to build a government building over here. Problem is that glass wasn't made the same way it's made today. And so it's really leaky. And so, I mean, every city in the world, I think, has this. Every wealthy city, or a city that had wealth for a period, is a grand building with a beautiful skylight that got immediately capped over as soon as it was built. And that's what this building story was. For years, it sat derelict, or not derelict, it was used for federal offices. It was dark and dank and mildewy, and then they decided to fix it up a little bit. It cost a lot of money, a lot of federal funds to do it, and now it's this grand space that we have today. We're hearing the sound of Minnesota winter right now. We got the snowblower just across the way right now. Oh yeah, there we go. You know what I want to try to do? No, we'll come back into this actually, never mind. Let's go this way. So I told you about my friend Scott, right? F. Scott Fitzgerald, here he is. Kind of a short guy, as you can see. Right here, he's on a pedestal, he's still only not even quite my height. I don't know if that's actually built to scale, but I'd say he's one of two very famous writers here. Do we count comic books writers as writers? Because if we do, then Charles Schulz is also from St. Paul. And so you'll see lots of different Peanuts characters all over here. Let's go this way, around this fountain. Over here we have the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts. This is the largest privately funded theater building in the Twin Cities. And what that means is that they don't take city funds, grants, etc. Sorry, public funds rather. And so when you go in there, you have like the Target Lounge and the 3M foyer and that sort of thing, because they have to get corporate financing. But it's actually two theaters. You can see there, that brick bit above the glass, that's the big theater. It looks a lot like the Kennedy Center in DC in terms of its design. Meanwhile, there's one over here, that's the music hall. And so in the music hall, they have operas and chamber orchestras and all sorts of stuff like that. Over here, this grand building is the library, which we'll come to in just a moment. But how do I want to do this? I'm just thinking out loud for my roots. I want to show you guys the Mississippi. So I am going to come back to the library, and right now I'm going to turn our attention to focus on this brick building over here. So this brick building over here is originally the Minnesota Club. Remember I was telling you about the University Club earlier, these exclusive private members clubs? Well, this is one of them. And so you could pay for membership to be able to go over there. Private members clubs still exist, but they've gone a little bit out of fashion in the 21st century. And so this has since been sold or leased, I'm not sure if it's sold or leased, to a sports team, the Minnesota Wild. We are the state of hockey. Hockey is our official state sport over here. And there was a tragic period from the early 90s to the early 2000s when Minnesota did not have a professional sports team, hockey team. But then they came back with the Minnesota Wilds. This is the headquarters of the Minnesota Wild, and it also is the home of this guy. See the statue here? That is none other than Herb Brooks. Herb Brooks is a hockey coach for the University of Minnesota, and in the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, he won the Cold War. The story goes, I mean, this is like a favorite, it's like a drinking game for history professors. It's like, when did the Cold War end? Because there's not a line in the sand, or like, it definitely ended here. And it was a death by 1,000 cuts situation. Some people argue that it was, the fall of the Berlin Wall and an announcement that fateful night in the late 80s. Other people say, no, it was Ronald Reagan saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. But people here in Minnesota say it was a Lake Placid Olympics when the United States hockey team defeated the Soviet Union in the semifinal game. And so as a result of that, it was a game where it's like the Soviets were like the big bad. I mean, there's a reason that every 80s movie has a Russian as a bad guy in that. It's because of this whole tradition of fighting against the Goliaths, the Americans being the Davids. I mean, the Olympics back then weren't professionalized, and so you had to be an amateur. There's all these amateur players against the state of the Soviet Union, and yet Herb Brooks led his team of mostly Minnesotans to win. When they showed this game on TV, the announcer famously said, "Do you believe in miracles?" when the U.S. won, and then the U.S. won to be in the final and lost that. We don't tell that part of the story because it's not a good ending. So we ended here, and we end it with Kurt Russell in the movie Miracle. You can watch the movie Miracle from the 2000s, Kurt Russell doing a bad Minnesota accent. But that whole hockey team was made up of mostly Minnesotans going to the University of Minnesota. I mean, hockey's a huge deal over here. It's hard to understand. Even like the Minnesota State Hockey League's high school hockey tournaments, that is one of the most viewed sports events of the year here in Minnesota. HB for Herb Brooks is Herbie's. This is a beautiful restaurant that they have. Herbie's on the Green is the formal name of it. And it's named for Herb Brooks over there. And it's the old dining room for the Minnesota Club. So that part is open to the public, that part of the building. Meanwhile, the other part of the building is the administrative offices for the Minnesota Wild. So you'll see above us the flag for the Minnesota Wild, the flag for the NHL, the flag for Minnesota, the flag for Canada, because there are Canadian NHL teams, and the US flag as well. And you still do have that original plaque saying the Minnesota Club right here, plus the Minnesota Wild's logo. This is fun. I don't know why I never noticed before, but I've only just been told that this is actually an animal. Did you know this, KJ? I only just found this out. No, I thought it was a really nice picture of some trees and all that stuff. And then I realized, oh no, like that's the mouth, and then that's the eye, the star right there, and there's like that ear and the nose over there. And it's actually a creature. It's a creature in the thing. I thought it was just a Minnesota landscape. I'm apparently the last person to realize this. so we'll move on. There's the previous hockey team here, the North Stars were the NHL team. The North Stars left in 1993 when Norm Green, the owner of the team, was embroiled in controversy. There was a bit of a sex scandal going on with him, and he sold the team down to Dallas. The Dallas Stars continue to play to this day. And this still causes hot opinions. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why he moved the team. Another one was like he was trying to move to the Target Center, which is where the Timberwolves currently play, and there was a disagreement about the contract for the soda. So were they going to use Coca-Cola or Pepsi products, and they couldn't agree on that. But then I think most people think that the reason he left was because he'd gotten to be deeply unpopular here after being caught out in a sex scandal. And so anyway, nowadays when people hear the name Norm Green, they often will respond in a knee-jerk sort of sense with an expletive that starts with the letter F and a Norm Green afterwards. So temperatures run hot here. We like to have our hockey here. And the person who helped get the hockey team back into St. Paul was the mayor of St. Paul. He was a Democrat, then he later ran as a Republican, Norm Coleman. And I would argue that Norm Coleman won the race to become St. Paul's mayor on the back of saying, I brought hockey back to Minnesota. That's how popular hockey is over here. Let's cross, no one's coming. It's, of course, didn't hurt that Norm Coleman's opponent tragically was killed 11 days before the election. But the hockey also helped. So that story is, it's a tragedy of a story. The Bernie Sanders of the 1990s was Paul Wellstone, Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota. This liberal lion of the Senate, we're gonna go this way here. He is flying around the state. He's actually going to a funeral of a friend when his airplane crashes up in northern Minnesota and it kills him, his wife, a bunch of staffers as well. And then the Democrats have to scramble. The DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party, has to scramble to figure out what they're gonna do for this election. The ballots have already been printed. So they think we need a home run on this. Let's get the most popular Democrat in the state, a guy who had run for president of the United States, Walter Mondale, also a former senator. So he came out of retirement to take Paul Wellstone's spot on the ticket. But ultimately, it was 11 days left. And so Norm Coleman ended up winning, but barely, which meant that when he ran for re-election, he lost to someone who would never leave, Al Franken. And of course, Al Franken would be mired in controversy and ended up having to leave the Senate as well in the kind of the hazy days of the Me Too movement. And then after that, Tina Smith took over. And now Tina Smith is retiring, so we have a new person taking over. That's that one Senate seat for the last 25 years has been quite consequential. Look over here, for as far as you can see at least, all the snow coming down, this is the Mississippi River Valley. It is also the highest navigable part of the Mississippi River. And so when you come up this river, if you go any farther, there's waterfalls. And now there have been locks that have been built to allow you to get to Minneapolis, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And so instead, a lot of the ships that come up here, like Viking River cruises, for example, they'll come over here, and this is where they'll port and then go to the St. Paul Hotel after that. This is a river valley, and so, there's quite a lot of elevation change. If you look straight down here, KJ, you can see we are way up here. The river valley carved a pretty intense valley. And so as a result, St. Paul will never be as close to its river as Minneapolis is. A lot of cities have come to embrace the riversides, but we have this long separation over that way, which causes some interesting things. Like we have a big festival over on Harriet Island over there every year. I think that last year was Alanis Morissette came through. It's really cool. I was giving a tour. I could hear Alanis Morissette music coming out. Now coming into here, it's a river, there is still a river walk down there, although the stairs, like many stairs in the winter, are closed in the winter. But the way you get through is this way. You just go through the elevator and then go straight down. We're not going to do that though. I just want to show you one other thing. So this is the Science Museum of Minnesota. So this is a ticketed museum that you can go to. But in addition to the museum, we also have this fantastic thing here, the Mississippi River Visitor Center, which is part of the National Park Service. So you've got national parks who run this place. You can go in there, you actually have a park ranger come through it. So it's this big swath of land going on the Mississippi River on either side of the Twin Cities that runs that place. Meanwhile, over there is one of the largest IMAX theaters in Minnesota. And so you can go see that, and they have a fantastic museum as well to check out. Come on back to Science Museum. That one costs money, but the Mississippi River Visitor Center is free to go to. And they have a little VR thing where you can pretend you're an eagle and go fishing. It's pretty fun. Let's go this way. Oh, I neglected to mention, look at that. See the cathedral over there? You can just make out the silhouette, or I can. Can you see it on camera? Yep. That's cool. So, in front of us, though, this big center here, that's the River Center, which is connected to the XL, ooh, I almost said XL Energy Center. It's not that anymore, is it? It's the Grand Casino Event Center here in Minnesota. I think all Minnesotans are having like a white blood cell reaction to this name change, because when the building opened, when the Minnesota Wild first came to Minnesota, it was branded for the Xcel Energy Center. Xcel is a big, natural, it's an electricity company here. And now they've just, their naming rights have expired. 20 years have gone by. I think it was 20 years, maybe 25. And so they got new naming rights for a casino nearby, Grand Casino. But everyone's so used to just calling it the X that there's a little bit of like, people be like, no, I'm calling it the X, which I honestly, I find it kind of funny because like, it's not like we should have that much allegiance to another corporate overlord that paid a lot of money, but here we are. All right. So crossing back over here, this beautiful building is the library, the George Latimer Public Library. George Latimer was the mayor, very consequential mayor of St. Paul. So that's actually been named after him more recently. He was the mayor, what was the 70s? Could be wrong about that. Fact check. I'll put it in the comments. But the library predates him. The library is built by James J. Hill. Remember James J. Hill all the way back over on 7th Avenue? So James J. Hill, he's giving a lot of money to the city to be able to build up this city. I'm going to take a left into here. So the city comes and asks him for, well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. They initially asked the Carnegie family to give money for a library because the Carnegie family gets to be known for giving money for education. And the Carnegie family says, no, you guys are James J. Hilltown, let Jim give the money. And so he ends up funding this place. That half of it over there is a public library. This half of it over here, until recently, was a business library, the James J. Hill Reference Library. So it's a place you go, get these big tomes, these books that would tell you, what the price of coal was from 1873 to 1942. And so you can do a lot of business research there. Now those sort of places are not as needed in this day and age. And so it became an event center. They had sort of weddings and stuff there in the 20 teens. And so it comes here, this is the entrance to the library. It goes all the way up to the top over there. You can bring your books over there, that cool little conveyor belt machine. And one of the interesting things about libraries also is that libraries are all about distribution of information, historically speaking, right? Like you can trace the lineage all the way back to like the King James Bible being published and this thing being the thing that would allow people to, actually let's go in. Let's go over here. Let's show you this innovation center over this way. Excuse me, there you are. Yeah, we're doing a YouTube video. No, but I figured the Innovation Center was up there and had all the content creation stuff, so I just wanted to profile it for our YouTube video.
Okay. Yeah, you should check in with the Wind Center to see if it's okay.
Okay, we'll do.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You're seeing the secret sauce right now of 1 minute tours. The 1 minute tours is kind of built on the idea that like, in 1 minute, there's not a lot of time to tell someone to go away. So I did a lot of 1 minute tours that way. And now with One City, One Take, the other version of this is just like, look, if I want to get kicked out, someone will kick us out, it's not that big of a deal. But usually people, what I find is like, if I go and I ask for the permission, it typically goes through just so many meetings that it's not even worth doing. Like they want to have a meeting about it, and they say, well, you're gonna talk about this, and then they want me to sign a waiver and all this stuff. So instead, I ask for forgiveness. So George Latimer Public Library staff, I ask for forgiveness. I love your library. I hope you will appreciate that I'm profiling the space over here. But what I just want to show off is the fact that this library, it used to be about distributing information, but now they do all this stuff to profile ways to give people access to making stuff. So like having recording studios and all that. Oops, I've gone too high. You go down one. There's gonna be a common theme of the videos. John goes too high in the elevator. And so in addition to having, books and all the stuff you would expect to see at a library, you got all sorts of tools, like a 3D printer over here, a podcasting booth. It's just in here. We won't go in there so we won't disturb anyone in there, but that's the Innovation Center. And then they have the traditional library all around us as well here. Let's go on the stairs, actually. the other side of this building, the Business Reference Library, like I said, it was an event space. What happened there is that in the 2010s, these barn weddings got to be really popular. You know, like, I feel like every second person in Minnesota has a family member who has a barn in the middle of a field somewhere that hasn't been maintained. They don't have the farm anymore like they used to. There's a nice shot of the library as well. And so the legislature realized, oh my God, we have an issue here. People having all these barn weddings. There's no fire suppression systems. It was waiting for a disaster to happen. The legislature passes a law, and the law says that they have to put sprinkler systems in these places, which immediately make it not worth it for most of these families that were just getting some money on the side by renting out these old barns that were over there. So they stop. The rule is that, like, if you have a public gathering of more than a certain number of people, I don't know the exact number right now, then you have to actually establish a fire system and have fire suppression, sprinklers, and all the rest. Now, other places get gobbled up in this same legislation, and one of those places is the reference library. And so this reference library, which had started to find itself in the events business, has to invest tens of millions of dollars to get up to code. And as a result, the library's been closed for years. I believe it was 2018 it closed. It was just before COVID that closed. And now it is reopening. I actually met with a developer there recently. It's gorgeous up there. Avalon St. Paul. Still says private property, keep out. So I think they're still in the renovation process of that building. But once it opens, like, it is, I cannot overstate like how impressive the building is. It looks like a Harry Potter space. There's a huge atrium in the middle with books that go all the way up to the ceiling. Look at the height of that building. It goes all the way up to the ceiling. Little spiral staircases on both sides going in and out of it. It's really, really neat. This is a capital city nowadays, so it has a feel of this kind of imperial capital city around here, but it wasn't originally planned to be. The original capital city was going to be St. Peter, Minnesota, which is the second time in this video I've mentioned St. Peter, because St. Peter is also where the Traverse des Sioux Treaty was that made Minnesota kind of what it is today. And so if you go to St. Peter nowadays, you see these gigantic boulevards as these guys were planning the capital to be there. So when the town was platted, they platted it with huge widths of their main streets. And then in the dead of night, one of the lawmakers changed the capital over here to St. Paul. And so St. Paul kind of got the default status as capital. That is dangerous as heck. Look at that.
Oh my God.
Hey,
Hi.
how you doing? Good. Look at this guy on the one wheel. Look at this, get a shot of that. This guy's crazy. He's on the one wheel in the ice with a food delivery, I think. That is next level bananas. The brass balls on that guy, wow. Oh my. Look at this gorgeous building up here. See this thing? So this is City Hall. It's actually City Hall and the Ramsey. Wow. Minnesotans are built different, people. That is a level of confidence that I don't have. This big building here is the City Hall for St. Paul and the Ramsey County Courthouse. I'm not sure if we're gonna be allowed in. There's a security check that we have to go through, but let's give it a try, shall we? Oh, thank you. Appreciate you. Hey, man. Doing well. We're filming a YouTube video, a long 3-hour one-take video of St. Paul. I was wondering if we're allowed to film the atrium here.
Yes, you are.
Yeah? Cool. What do you need? Just to go through security?
Yes. So
Cool.
jacket, belts, everything out your pocket.
Awesome. Do you want to set that down there? I'll talk while we're going through security. You point at me and then you can unload. So, this is St. Paul's City Hall and Ramsey County Courthouse as well. This building is stunning. This building reminds me of, it's like City Hall by way of Gotham City. It has like cool Art Deco vibe about it, which I just think is the best. I want to go check it out now. Oh, what's that?
Oh, no, you're good.
All right, cool. Oh, I shouldn't have walked through there because of the camera. I need to keep talking at you. Go ahead. Hi. So this building is built, is budgeted for in the 1920s, and so they have a lot of money to give to the St. Paul City Hall. And then by the time construction comes, it's the Great Depression. So what are we going to do? We have all this money, and yet the cost of goods goes way down. So they just put more and more and more money into this place, and that's what we have today. This incredible, incredible building. Can we get through here and keep filming?
Like this person.
Oh, cool. Put your hand out like that. All right. Thanks for the help, mate. Appreciate you. Point it to me. Point it to me. I'll keep talking. I'll fill time. I'll fill time. Its security point is, just a reality of being in a courtroom building, but it's going to be worth it.
While you're down, real quick, young man.
And so when they build this building, is budgeted for, I believe it's in 1928, and it's constructed in the 1930s. And they spare no expense, and they just do stuff that is like pretty cutting edge. They embrace all the opulence of the Art Deco movement to put this in here. Now, the unfortunate thing is, because it is a courthouse, you need to have security over here. But unlike over in Hennepin County, where they have the skyway levels, you can walk right in. Here, security is right at the outset, and so these lovely security people are over here. But they also have a job to do, and so a lot of people come in. They don't think they can come in here. They don't think, oh, it's a public building. Come in here, check it out. It's awesome. I'm going to show you why. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. Where should we avoid?
Don't want to get down on the camera.
Got
Stay
it.
in the public areas.
Got it. Are we good to go up to the reference library up top?
As long as you stay in the public areas, but
Yep.
don't go in the library.
Oh, not in the library. Okay, cool. We'll just go through here then and out, I think. Thank you.
As long as you're in the public.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate you. Look at this thing. See that? I'm from social media. I am. We're making a video right now. So get a shot of this thing, because you got to watch it for a little while to realize the significance of it. This is a Native American with a peace pipe, and he is moving right in front of you in real time. He rotates every 45 minutes around. And so the whole thing we just see is he's angled this way, but if you stay here for long enough, you'll see him start to move. Meanwhile, the mirrored ceilings up there create a perception of like depth, so it like doubles the size of this space. Like these walls, these marble walls are also memorials, because if you look behind the columns, you have names of people who have served. And so all these memorials for different wars that have happened over here for people from St. Paul. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous space. Here are the alternate versions that they had here for the statue. So they had a few ideas of what they do, but then they ultimately went with this one. Great building though, isn't it? Even like the lifts over here are something else. So in these lifts, here we go. Look at that. 7th floor. So look at the old style numbering they have. 1st floor here. I'm gonna take it down to the basement real quick. They have cool displays that are worth seeing, I think. Oh, thank you, security. You guys are lovely. It isn't always my interaction with security, but today it was. I appreciate you. He was saying, I don't know if you could hear on the microphone, there's a medical issue going on, so there's an ambulance, and he was just giving me some advice on where to avoid. That's one of my favorite things to show right here. So Ramsey County is the county that we're in right now. It's the seat of the capital. And this is an early map of the Minnesota Territory. So you'll notice that the territory it goes way over to the Missouri River, which is the border over on the western side. So it goes to what is now North and South Dakota. And so these different names you see on there are the names of the counties. And so there are a lot fewer counties. Now there are I think about 150 counties. I think it says it on here somewhere. No, I looked it up. Anyway, the counties are Pembina, Itasca, Makata, Wanata, Dakota, Wabasha, and then you see with a yellow one is Ramsey, and on either side of that you've got Benton and Washington counties. And those counties have been carved up more and more and more as more populations went out there. But this is 1848 when Minnesota is established, and so they have to figure out what are some just judicial places that the ways we administer the county. And that's what's happening over here. And you also have all these panels here about the construction of this building. You can see the bones of the building as it's going up there. So it's definitely worth your time to come on back over here and check it out. Funny, the guy, the security guard there, he was giving me advice on avoiding the medical thing happening here, and he said also you have to stay in the public areas. What he was alluding to there is that this is a courtroom. This is a place where very serious things are happening, right? The bottom 3 floors where that atrium was, that's where the city government is based. But above there are county court cases, and those county court cases, they involve, violent crimes, victims, jurors, people for whom privacy is very important. And so there are areas that say in very bold letters, restricted, no filming allowed. And myself, I actually have a press badge to be in the federal courts, not in the county courts. But I've gone through it, and there's a level of sensitivity when it comes to filming in courtrooms. But I do want to bring you up here. We're at the 17th floor, and then we're going to go up one more floor. So let's come right over here. See, up to Ramsey County Law Library here. So only one of the lifts goes one level higher, because the top level they reserved this beautiful library. I think probably what's happened is they wanted to like use the floor space up there, so they don't have the elevators go all the way up, except for this one. Now this one, look at this. Ta-da! Bonus number 18 is on here. By Minnesota statute, every county courthouse must have a law library on site. This is an accessibility issue. If you're someone who's trying to utilize the court systems, well, then you need to be able to access the laws. And so that's what this is over here. I'm going to be quiet as we go through here. Yeah, doing well. How about you? We're just shooting, I'm a tour guide in town. I'm shooting a 3-hour video of St. Paul's history. I just wanted to show this place. Is there anyone in here that would be disturbing if we did that?
The lights are off on that side.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to be closed a little bit early, but if you want to roll through.
That's it, yeah, literally just a minute.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Feel free to come behind the desk too.
Oh, appreciate you. That'd be great. What's your name?
Mike.
Mike, I'm John. KJ. Yeah. We'll be super fast. Just want to give you the view. The view here is second to none. So this is the, yeah. How are we doing?
I wanted to tell you,
Yeah.
a couple friends of mine
Yeah.
saw your video.
Oh, really?
We're like, wow.
Oh, awesome. Oh, good. I got some attention for you. Are you okay being in this video? We're just filming a long video right now. All right, cool. Yep. So we're doing the thing. We have this video we're doing called One City, One Take, where we go for 3 hours and do one continuous take. We do the whole thing up on YouTube. We did it in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago. So now we're doing our St. Paul version. So we started at the Cathedral, and now we're here, and we're working our way over. So.
We get the best views early in the morning.
Yeah.
Like I'm down here around 6 and the sun coming up. It's
Oh,
just
man.
wonderful.
This is the thing. I mean, both Hennepin and Ramsey counties have law libraries on the top level, and it's not very well known. You can just come up here and use this. Let's go take a quick look so these guys can get out of here, because this. Okay. Oh, sure. I'll turn them off when I leave, though. So when you look around here, he was mentioning before, the best views are down the Mississippi over that window you're saying. So you can see down that way. And so what you see up here is this incredible view. I mean, the actual intended purposes of this, look at this. This is all these law books over here for you to be able to take in the laws. And quickly, let's do a quick lap, KJ, out of respect for these guys. I just want to show the view from out here. Where is this? Look at the light switch, but it doesn't really matter. I mainly want you to see the view. On a clear day, you'd be able to look out this window and see the Capitol. I can actually see it, just barely. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera. Can you see it, KJ? Like with your eyes? You're just right there. Just barely. I don't think you're going to get it on camera. So it's just the best. I mean, you come up here, these places are, they're not seldom used, but they are not like something that you see a huge crunch of people coming in to use these places, you know? There are, laws on these books that you cannot find on the internet, right? There's stuff here like this General and Special Laws of Minnesota, 1885. Maybe there's an obscure statute about, land rights that you want to appraise yourself of. And so you might find something in here that otherwise either wouldn't be online or would only be online with a special subscription to an expensive law service. They also have all these pictures of judges and stuff, which is great. So, thank you. This will be on my YouTube channel. So 1 minute tours on YouTube. You can have a look. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Oh, I'm so glad we got them in time. How nice is this? A list of woods. Got your American black walnut in here. Thanks for your service. Do you want a free book? You want a Defense of Equal Employment Claims, 2nd edition? Norton Bankruptcy Law and Practice Analysis? Some good stuff. All right.
I got 15%.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to Union Depot and then done. So 15%, you think we got like 10 minutes left still, 15? Yeah, let's give it a go. Do we have any other backup batteries?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Beautiful elevators as well. Just gorgeous. Yeah. Exit there?
Yep, right there.
Cool. Woo. Oh. Minnesota. From here you can see that the big number 1 up there. That's the first National Bank building. And it's kind of one of the iconic things that people associate with St. Paul's skyline, over here. That first lights up. So it's one of those things like when you're driving back to St. Paul, you'll be able to see that from far and wide. The thing you have to understand about St. Paul as well as a city, I told you before, this is the last great American city east of the Mississippi. And that's a little bit of a braggadocious claim, but it's also like, it speaks to the culture that is here. The culture of St. Paul is a place that likes to associate itself and think of itself in the same way that we think of the old world, right? Of the old money types, I would even say. The people who come to St. Paul, who live in St. Paul, you get the multi-generational families coming through here. I think a lot of people associate this with a lot of the Irish and the Italians who come down here. And so, whereas Minneapolis, I think, is considered in popular imagination as more of a transient city, St. Paul has this feeling of like, I'm from here, my dad's from here, his dad's from here, etc., etc. And that has like that goes along with like kind of the ways that people think about St. Paul as well. There's like this somewhat resistance to change over here, a little bit more conservative when it comes to the architecture, and that served the city well, right? Like I said before, this has some of the best preserved architecture in the city as we walk on through here. I said before that it's the last great American city east of the Mississippi, and the second half of that statement is that Minneapolis is the first great American city west of the Mississippi. The other thing that you hear said a lot about the Twin Cities is that you date Minneapolis, but you marry St. Paul, right? So St. Paul is the one you bring home to mom and dad, right? And that kind of speaks to the fact that when people think of St. Paul, a lot of times they think about the neighborhoods. This is a college town as well. There's a lot of universities around here. Macalester College, University of St. Thomas, University of St. Catherine, St. Kate's, Hamlin University. The University of Minnesota has a campus in St. Paul in addition to Minneapolis. That St. Paul campus is an agricultural campus. And so there's just a really healthy, residential feel about St. Paul. Now, does that actually bear out when I compare it to Minneapolis? And I live in a residential area in South Minneapolis. I think probably not, actually. I think the cities are similarly residential, but stereotypes are also kind of the story that society tells of a thing. And I think that the story that people tell of St. Paul is this sleepy, unchanging place. And that's where we are today. So get a shot of this building at the corner here. So this is like some of that gorgeous architecture that you see around here. I'm gonna see if we can duck inside. Oh no, the next one's when I wanna duck inside. Over there I see the light rail coming through that way. That light rail connects from here all the way down to downtown Minneapolis. You can take that down University Avenue, through Frogtown, through Dinkytown, that's where the University of Minnesota is, crossing over the Mississippi River, through Cedar Riverside, the Somali neighborhood, and then making your way into downtown, finally terminating at Target Field, which is where the Minnesota Twins play. We talked a lot over at that Hmong memorial about the Hmong heritage that's here in Minnesota. But something else that as I film this, I feel is probably worth talking about is the Somali heritage that's here as well. As we record this today, it's just about a week and a half ago that President of the United States made a comment about Somali Americans being garbage people who he doesn't want here. And that's really taken hold for the residents of the Twin Cities, and it's been pretty abrasive for us here, because the way he's speaking, it's like he just understood who Somali people are for the first time over here. And for us who are from Minnesota, we remember the Somali Americans arriving here in the 1990s and 2000s. Like I remember being in high school with a lot of Somali kids who had just gotten here and they were in English second language classes. And so like we've seen this evolution. And this is a story of American immigration as well. Immigrants, when they arrive to the US, are often rejected by mainstream society before they're fully embraced. And that's happened with the Irish, the Italians, and now the Somalis as well. But that's the story of a few decades ago. Now, like my state senator is Omar Fateh. He also just ran for Minneapolis mayor. My congressperson is Ilhan Omar, another Somali American person. And so these are people finding their ways into the corridors of power. And that's kind of creating a situation where there's a discussion about them. So point is that earlier in the video, I was telling you about the Hmong population that's here. We have a huge Hmong population. We also have the largest Somali population in the world outside of Somalia. And so when people think about Minnesota, a lot of them think of the movie Fargo. They think of kind of old world stereotypes and all that. But the fact of the matter is, like, we're a pretty diverse place, especially here in the Twin Cities. This is that First National Bank building where we are right now. I just like to do a little lobby hopping. So let's just take out the lobby right here. Right? Look at this place. So the reason there's a lot of people here is upstairs from here are a lot of state offices. State offices like Secretary of State, right here. Services by appointment only, you'll notice. That's actually the new seal. I mentioned we had a new flag. That's the new seal of Minnesota as well. Mani Shota Makoche. That's where we're getting the word Minnesota from. Land where the water reflects the sky. Where should we go? Let's go this way. So the Secretary of State's office is up there. When I registered my business, I registered it up here in this building. So So I mentioned about James J. Hill before, that we were at his house, which also mentioned like why was he able to make such a lasting impact on St. Paul? And it's the railroads. So railroads connected Minnesota out to the west. And so as we make our way over to that railroad station right now, you are going to see how much money came to Minnesota. In the early days of kind of American expansionism, you take the train out to St. Louis or to St. Paul, and then you have to jump on a wagon and go the rest of the way to go to like the Oregon Trail, for example. And so St. Paul gets to be a port of call for a lot of people making their way out west. And that's, the railroads ended here, but James J. Hill is the one who connected them all the way out west. Now, he's not the first person to connect the continent from one side to the other. That is like imagined in popular culture with President Ulysses S. Grant going out west and driving the Golden Spike into the railroads to bring them together and join the Cheyenne Sea. That was the Northern Pacific Railroad. And that route kind of it ended in Portland, and it went through lots of tunnels and bridges. But it was James J. Hill who built the Empire Builder, and that actually found a path that was farther north. It kind of hugged the Canadian border. Today, if you take the Amtrak from Chicago to Seattle, you are following the footsteps of James J. Hill and his company and his family. And so he really made the American West, at least from a colonial American expansionist standpoint. He sends a surveyor out west, and he meets with all these prominent townspeople and business people like Charles Conrad over in Kalispell, Montana. And when he meets with him, they shake hands, and he says to him, "You build me Conrad says to Hill, "You build me a railroad and I'll bring you a town." And they build a town in Kalispell, Montana. If you ever fly to Glacier National Park, you're probably flying into the Kalispell Airport. And that was where the railroads initially went to. But then James J. Hill had a surveyor go out there and look for a path to make its way through the mountains where it would go to the minimal number of tunnels and bridges so they could spend less money on it. And they found this path, which was better to go through Whitefish than it was through Kalispell. And so they changed the route. It initially was gonna go through Kalispell, and after the fact, gonna make this? Here we go. After the trains had been going to Kalispell, suddenly they went up north by 10 miles, and the people of Kalispell had to make their way on a one-way train, which is rickety and all that. Whitefish became the point. And now, if you go to Whitefish today, it is like the spot to go where the rodeo is and the dude ranch is, and it's like the entrance to Glacier National Park is up there. Now, Glacier National Park is really built hand in hand with James J. Hill, because it's him and then later his son who are going out there looking for business opportunities. Because it's not enough that they just build the infrastructure, they also want to make it so it's a tourist-friendly facility for people to go to. And so the train stations out there, they look like lodges, they look like national park buildings when you get there. And they would sell packages where you take the train and a bus would pick you up and give you a tour through Glacier National Park. This is American entrepreneurship at its core. And that's the thing that made the Hill family impossibly wealthy. That's the thing that made St. Paul really get a lot of the money to build things like that library or the cathedral that we saw earlier on. But the grandest achievement of James J. Hill and his family is coming into view right now this way, and it is Union Depot. This is our train terminal. It was sitting there in bad need of repair for decades. In fact, for a long time, even when I was a kid, I took the Amtrak. I remember coming up and going to a random train station in the Midway neighborhood. Wasn't at all attractive, not particularly safe either. Meanwhile, they had this beautiful building here that just needed to be renovated. And so, when I say just needed to be renovated, I mean, there's a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time to do it, but the result is gorgeous. And so this is the spot where we're gonna wrap up our tour today. We're gonna go inside here and check it out. And I'm just so grateful they built this thing. This is now kind of the new epicenter of downtown. We have Union Depot here, I should say renewed epicenter. Over there's our new baseball stadium, which we won't be able to see in the snow, but CHS Field is over there, where the St. Paul Saints play. St. Paul Saints are the minor league ball team underneath the Minnesota Twins, founded by Bill Murray. Bill Murray is one of the initial investors, the actor, comedian, Ghostbuster. And so that's just over this way. The St. Paul Farmers Market is over there, but here is Union Depot. I heard you. All right, so here's that beautiful terminal hall right here of Union Depot. This is also the place where you can get on the train and make your way on to other cities that maybe we'll visit in the future, like Kalispell or like Seattle or like Chicago and beyond here. This terminal hall really goes to show you what a huge impact the railways had on St. Paul as a place. St. Paul as a place is, I think, worthy of seeing. I think people come to the Twin Cities a lot. They fly into Minneapolis, St. Paul Airport, but they spend all their time with Minneapolis. But St. Paul is a place that is worthy of your attention. There's a lot of history that goes on here, a lot of power. It's not a place that just jumps out at you and says, no, here's the thing that you're supposed to look at. But instead, it's a place that is really something that you can take your time in, and you have to just soak in the environment of St. Paul. So this is that beautiful train hall right over here. They have an event going on, so the curtain's over it right now. But for now, let's finish over here with the view of the Amtrak trains coming through right here. This has been St. Paul, Minnesota's One City, One Take. If you've enjoyed this, there are other videos you can watch on the channel, which I'll link below, like of Minneapolis. Thank you so much for watching. Where do you want me to go next? Leave it in the comments below. Don't cut yet.